Welcome to Chinese Novel Audiobook Chapter 41 Girl 2. The girl did not ask Barrett and the other man for help. She put the dead man and woman together with great effort. Then, with a pursed mouth and tears in her eyes, she took out a shovel from the house, walked to the door without saying a word, and started shoveling hard. Boss, don't you want to help? Jin asked. These two people must be extremely important to her. Since she didn't ask us for help, she obviously wanted to bury them alone. Barrett shook his head, then shouted to the girl, "Hey, you're busy here now, let's go to other people's homes to collect the bodies, and then we'll help you get all the people to the center of town." The girl nodded without saying a word. Let's go. Barrett took Jin out of the house, and then they split up and searched room by room. The village had a small population, only about 100 people. After about an hour, the two men moved all the bodies of the suffering villagers to the center of the village. Barrett personally dug a huge hole in the ground, while Jin got a huge stone, carved it into the shape of a tombstone with a knife, and engraved the words, "Tomb of all the villagers of Somon Island," on it. Then the two of them put all the bodies into the huge pit. However, they did not rush to bury the body, but sat aside waiting for the girl to arrive. Soon, the girl appeared with a shovel. When she saw the stone tablet in front of the pit, she could no longer suppress her emotions and fell to the ground, crying loudly. Barrett and the other man didn't know how to comfort people when they saw this. After all, they had never done the job of comforting people. They could only wait silently. Fortunately, the girl was very strong. She only cried for a few minutes before she stood up by herself. She walked step by step to the big pit, shoveled some soil with red eyes, and fell into the pit. Let's go and help. Seeing this, Barrett patted Jin, stood up and walked towards the huge pit. Jin quickly stood up and walked towards the huge pit with Barrett. Do you need help? Barrett came to the pit and did not rush to take action, but asked softly. Thanks. The girl looked up at Barrett and the other man, bowed deeply, and then nodded slightly. Barrett and the other man didn't say much and acted quickly. However, neither of them used their abilities. Instead, they each found a shovel and helped to cover the soil. But even so, with the help of Barrett and the other man, the speed of covering the soil was much faster. An hour later, a huge mound of earth was formed. The girl's eyes were red. She looked at Barrett and asked, "Can I use that bearded man's head to commemorate them?" Can. Barrett hesitated for a while and nodded. To him, it didn't matter whether he killed the bearded man or not. The man had been crippled by him anyway and would die sooner or later. He kept him alive just to wait for Whitebeard's arrival. But now that the girl wanted to use the bearded man's head to sacrifice to the villagers, and after seeing the miserable condition of the villagers, he had no reason to refuse. Thank you. The girl bowed deeply, picked up a long knife on the ground, walked towards the bearded man with all his limbs broken, raised the long knife in her hand, and with a puff, blood spilled all over her. The bearded man ended his life in a coma. Then, the girl grabbed the bearded man's hair, carried the head to the tombstone, knelt down in front of it, and kowtowed respectfully. Afterwards, the girl placed the bearded man's head in front of the tombstone and thrust the knife into his skull, nailing him to death in front of the tomb. Then he stood up and looked at the huge tomb without saying a word, his eyes red and tears flowing. Boss, Whitebeard is a world-famous pirate, how could such a person appear under his command? Looking at the bearded head nailed in front of the tomb, Jin sighed softly. This is normal. Barrett explained, pirates make their living by plundering, but some pirates have consciences and will not plunder the poor, such as Captain Roger and Whitebeard. But Whitebeard likes to have sons, and as long as he likes the person, no matter what the person's character is, he will take him as a son. Therefore, his pirate group is mixed, with all kinds of people, so it is normal for this kind of people to appear. In fact, this also shows that this world is a world of the strong. Look at this bearded man. In fact, he is not Whitebeard's son at all. He just relied on one of Whitebeard's sons. He dared to plunder and kill unscrupulously under the banner of Whitebeard. Barrett patted Jin and said, "So. As long as you are strong enough, no one can bully you. Then can you teach me to become stronger?" Before Jin could speak, the girl standing in front of the tombstone spoke in a hoarse voice. Why should I teach you? What can you give me? Besides, our previous deal has not been completed yet. Barrett looked at the girl with amusement. Although he sympathized with the girl's experience, it was just sympathy. Moreover, such things happened almost every day in this world. If he sympathized with everything, he would not have been a pirate and would have just gone around saving people. Hearing this, the girl was silent for a moment, and then said to Barrett, "Come with me." The girl said this and took a step forward. Barrett followed behind him slowly. Jin fell at the rear of the car, looking at the girl in the front, then at Barrett, full of confusion. After a while, the girl brought the two to the first house they came to. The girl stopped in front of the house and turned back to say to the two, "Wait for me." Barrett and Jin nodded together and waited outside the house. A moment later, the girl came out of the house holding a sheepskin map and a permanent pointer. She handed them to Barrett and said, "My uncle went to sea in his early years. This is the sea chart he drew himself. In addition, this pointer leads to a country called Dressrosa." Dressrosa. Hearing this name, Barrett's mouth curled up slightly. In the original work, Doflamingo marched into the New World and occupied this country. And based on the time period, there was a good swordsman there who was atonement. You have completed a deal. Next, take us to see the food. Barrett smiled. The girl nodded and led the two of them to the southwest of the house. Not long after, the girl led the two of them to the forest. There was a small warehouse in the forest, covered with various branches, and looked very hidden. The girl pointed to the warehouse and said, "This is where our village stores grain, but I have never been in there, so I don't know exactly how much grain there is." Barrett nodded, and Jin stepped forward and pulled down the big lock on the door, pushed open the warehouse door, a flash of flame appeared on his hand, and everything inside came into view. The warehouse is not big, only about 20 square meters, and there are several barrels of wine and bags of flour in it. With Barrett and Jin's appetite, if they work hard, they can finish them in one meal and still not be full. The girl also saw the situation inside clearly, her heart skipped a beat, and she glanced at Barrett cautiously. Seeing that Barrett had a blank expression, she couldn't help but feel a little worried, afraid that Barrett would be angry and not take her away. Barrett didn't think too much about it. He was mentally prepared for this situation. After all, how much could a village have no matter how rich it was? Okay, the deal is done. Barrett had no intention of making things difficult for the girl. After all, she was already miserable enough, and he would feel guilty if he made things difficult for her. When the girl heard Barrett say the deal was done, she breathed a sigh of relief and nodded heavily, and the gloom and sadness on her face also dissipated a little. Then, Barrett and Jin started to move, one carrying wine and the other carrying rice and flour, and under the stunned gaze of the girl, they took off and flew in the sky. "They won't run away without me." Coming back to her senses, the girl pouted and quickly ran out of the forest towards the coast. When she saw that the big ship was still there, she couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Then, fearing that the two would leave him behind, he quickened his pace and ran towards the ship at full speed. After a while, she ran to the shore, gasping for breath. "Why are you so tired?" Barrett jumped off the boat and looked at the panting girl, asking curiously. "You guys just flew away without saying anything." After taking a breath, the girl glared at Barrett angrily. Her cute look almost made Barrett reach out and pinch her. "No, didn't I tell you? We still have to wait for people here. Since we promised to take you with us, we will definitely not leave you behind." Barrett said with a smile. "I thought you didn't want me anymore." Hearing Barrett's words, the girl pursed her lips, her eyes turned red, and she hugged Barrett's thighs and started crying. The girl was about 1.7 meters tall. With his height of nearly 4 meters, the girl hugged his thighs, and her head was just level with Barrett's big bird, making Barrett very embarrassed, not knowing whether to move or not. I could only yell awkwardly, "Hey, can you please let go? This is not nice." Chapter 42 Delia. My name is not hello, my name is Delia. The girl was crying loudly, her nose running. She raised her little head slightly and wiped her nose hard on her Barrett's pants. "I understand. Could you please let go of my hand and stop wiping your nose on my pants?" Barrett frowned, looking dissatisfied. Humph, Delia glared at Barrett unhappily, wiped her nose vigorously again before letting go of her hand. "You little brat." Feeling the stickiness on his pants, Barrett's face turned black and he punched Delia on the head. "Ah, you idiot, you'll get beaten up." Delia held her head in her hands and glared at Barrett fiercely. "Boss, what are you doing?" Just then, Jin's voice came from a distance. "Nothing." Barrett glared at Delia unhappily, waved his hand, and then said to Jin, Jin, go and see if there are any uninhabited islands around. We will drive the ship there, and then wait here for Whitebeard and the others to arrive. I know where there are uninhabited islands. As soon as Barrett finished speaking, Delia raised her head and interrupted him, with a smug expression on her face. You know. Barrett looked at Delia in confusion. About 10 nautical miles east of Somon Island, there is an uninhabited island. Delia raised her head like a proud peacock. Are you sure? Barrett confirmed. Everyone in our village knows about that island, but there are many ferocious beasts on it and we dare not go up. Delia glared at Barrett with dissatisfaction. Barrett didn't hesitate and said to Jin, Jin, go and take a look. If it really is there, we will drive the boat there. Okay, boss. Jin leapt into the air, a pair of wings quickly appeared behind him, and with a flap of his wings, he disappeared into the sky in an instant. Delia looked in the direction where Jin disappeared, her mouth wide open, her eyes flashing with shock and envy. Looking at Delia's expression, Barrett smiled, leapt up, and gently jumped onto the bow of the boat. Hey, can you take me up too? Delia shouted hurriedly when she saw this. There are stairs over there. Barrett replied calmly and walked into the cabin carrying things from the deck. Cheapskate. Delia made a face at the boat and climbed up the stairs to the bow. A few minutes later, Jin flew back and told Barrett that there was indeed an uninhabited island there, just as Delia said. Barrett immediately made a decision to go directly to the uninhabited island and stay there for one night. This decision almost frightened Delia to death, and she cried and shouted to stop him. At night, uninhabited island. Barrett, Jin, and Delia were sitting around a bonfire. How come you guys are so good at eating? Delia was shocked when she saw the two people eating meat non-stop. Their appetite was beyond her expectation. Barrett glanced at him indifferently, dropped the bone stick, and started practicing with his eyes closed. If you want to become a strong person, you must first be able to eat. Only if you can eat can you be able to fight. Jin dropped the bone stick and explained with a smile while grilling another piece of meat. Then he began to use the life return and the iron block to sharpen his fists, and the bones made a crunching sound. Don't you feel any pain? Delia was horrified when she heard this and stared at Jin blankly. In her opinion, no one could endure the pain of bone wear and tear. It hurts. Jin nodded. Then, he smiled and said, but it's okay to get used to the pain. And if you want to become a strong person, you need more than just this little bit of pain. You also need to be prepared for death. Awareness of death. Delia murmured to herself, turned her head and looked at Barrett who was practicing with his eyes closed, and made a decision in her heart. The next day, evening. Barrett and Jin defeated a large number of beasts and prepared to return to Somon Island to wait for the arrival of Whitebeard. Unexpectedly, Delia held Barrett tightly and refused to let go, insisting on going back with Barrett and the others. Barrett was causing a huge embarrassment, but Delia wouldn't listen no matter what and just hung on him. This made Jin, who was standing by, almost laugh to death. He was so unkind as to carry the dead beast away first, under the pretext of not delaying Barrett from enjoying his rare happiness. Delia, we are going there to fight a great battle, not to play. Once a fight breaks out, Somon Island might be sunk directly, so you should wait for us on the ship. Barrett looked innocent as he looked at Delia hanging on his thigh and looked at her seriously. Delia was silent for a moment, then she raised her head and looked at Barrett with tears on her face, and said pitifully, then you must promise not to abandon me and come back safely. Don't worry. The ship is still here. We won't abandon you, and we won't die that easily. Barrett rubbed her head and smiled. Woo, Delia sobbed and reluctantly let go of his hand. I go first. Seeing Delia let go of his hand, Barrett leapt up and fled away from the bow, using his, so close, so far, skill to the extreme and disappearing quickly in the air. You must come back safely. Delia looked worriedly in the direction of Somon Island and prayed silently in her heart. Somon Island, shore. Hohoa Jin crossed his arms across his chest, looking at the newly arrived Barrett with interest, and laughed like a pig. What are you laughing at? Barrett roared in anger, deeply regretting that he had taught this guy all those modern knowledge. As a result, Jin now knows too much and not only knows how to confront people, but also how to humiliate them. If the great cause is not accomplished, how can one have a home? Jin raised his eyebrows, then put his hands behind his back and looked straight ahead, looking like a domineering overlord. Quote. Barrett was speechless and gnashing with hatred. If he remembered correctly, this action was taken not long after they came out of Alabasta. He single-handedly wiped out a pirate group and said this while standing on the bow of the ship pretending to be cool. I didn't expect that Jin actually remembered it and imitated it directly. It would be fine if Delia was really a beauty, but the key is that she is just a little kid. Ha 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 ha. Seeing Barrett being humiliated, Jin laughed unscrupulously. Barrett didn't want to talk. He sat on the ground, staring blankly into the distance. Although he didn't object to getting married and having children in this world, he wouldn't be so outrageous as to find some little lowly. Once things here are over, send her away as soon as possible. However, when he thought of Delia's character, Barrett couldn't help but frown. Barrett had never thought of letting someone as weak as Delia get on board. After all, the aftermath of their fight alone would be enough to turn Delia into ashes. Boss, you are angry. Seeing that Barrett didn't speak for a long time, Jin thought that he had gone too far and caused Barrett's dissatisfaction. No, I was just wondering how strong Whitebeard is. Barrett shook his head and his expression turned serious. I look forward to it too. Hearing this, a flame flashed in Jin's eyes, and he looked piercing and sharp. Barrett patted Jin, slowly stood up, and explained with a smile, Jin, don't think too much, just prepare and stay alert. Whitebeard is a strong man who can fight Captain Roger one-on-one, and his subordinates are not weak either. The reason I provoked Whitebeard this time was not for the villagers, but mainly because I wanted to see how big the gap is between us and the world's top strong men in a life and death battle. Also, you stay here and watch while I go to the village and get a weapon. Otherwise, when the battle starts, it won't be a good thing if I don't have a weapon. Boss, you go. I'll watch here. Jin looked serious and nodded slightly, then stared at the coastline with anticipation and nervousness in his eyes. During the 5 months that he and Barrett had been drifting on the sea, Barrett had told him a lot, including the current top powerhouses, Whitebeard being among them. Later on Roger's ship, he learned more about powerful men, but Whitebeard's strength was admired by almost everyone. Even his master admitted that he was no match for Whitebeard. The only one on Roger's ship who could fight Whitebeard back and forth was Roger. That's why he hesitated when he heard that Big Beard was a member of Whitebeard's crew. To be more precise, he felt fear. However, after experiencing Barrett's domineering provocation, his fear had turned into a strong desire to fight. After all, swinging a sword at a strong person is the meaning of challenge. Barrett chuckled, jumped into the village, then quickly chopped down a big tree, carved a mold, and then collected all the ironware in the village, using his ability to melt it and pour it into the mold. In an instant, thick black smoke came out of the mold. Barrett quickly poured water on it, and thick steam instantly filled the air. When the water vapor dissipated, a strange painted halberd took shape. Damn, it seems that only professionals can forge this thing. Seeing the ugly painted halberd, Barrett was filled with black lines on his face. He walked towards the beach while holding the ugly halberd, cursing. Chapter 43 Whitebeard Pirates. The next day. A red sun rises from the sea level, and the sea water is instantly dyed red. The waves are sparkling and picturesque. The beautiful scenery makes people intoxicated. Come yet. Barrett looked into the distance and saw a ship slowly sailing towards Somon Island in front of the red sun. Next to him, Jin also opened his eyes dazedly, looked in the direction Barrett was looking, and shuddered all over, suddenly coming awake. Boss, Whitebeard is here. Jin's voice was trembling, with an inexplicable emotion in his tone. Ember. Barrett shouted softly, Whitebeard is all. We are going to look at the top of the mountain in the future. If we feel scared here, how can we reach the top in the future? Call. Jin let out a long breath, suppressed his restless mind, and stared at the pirate ship that was getting closer and closer. Jin, say hello to them. Looking at the pirate ship that was only tens of meters away from the two of them, Barrett smiled and patted Jin's shoulder. Jin understood what he meant, took a step forward and activated his domineering haki. Boom! A domineering will rushed straight into the sky, dispersing the dark clouds on the horizon and pressing towards the Whitebeard pirate ship. Ha 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 by Xiaoji, I'm coming. On the pirate ship, a man in a kimono laughed loudly, and a domineering will emanated from the ship, colliding with Jin's domineering color. The two domineering colors were equally matched, and, crackling, sounds were heard in the sky. Hulala! At this time, a heroic laugh came from the boat that was already close to the shore. Two guys over there, I heard that you asked me to come and pick them up in person. Now I'm here, bring them out to me. People have already paid tribute to the dead soul. If you want, I can take you to see him. Barrett chuckled and took a step forward. An even more domineering Haki shot straight into the sky. The domineering Haki emitted from Whitebeard's ship was instantly defeated, and the colorless energy instantly enveloped the Whitebeard pirate ship. Some ordinary pirates on the ship were stunned by the shock. Hulala! I am Whitebeard. Whitebeard was furious. Boom! A majestic momentum collided with Barrett's domineering aura. Boom! There were lightning and thunder in the sky, and the clouds in the sky were shaken apart, as if the sky was cracking apart. The skia is cracked. Someone pointed at the sky and shouted, with fear in his tone. What a strong domineering color. The man in samurai clothes at the bow of Whitebeard whispered. Scored, how did you become an enemy of such a strong man? On the bow, a young man wearing a small vest and a pineapple haircut asked the young man next to him. He contacted me using Mai's Den Mushi. He was extremely arrogant and insisted that Dad come over. Then, he said he was a former crew member of Roger's crew. Marco's eyes widened and he blamed them. Why didn't you tell me earlier? You've caused me so much trouble this time. Hulala! I am Whitebeard A. At this moment, Whitebeard roared, and his aura rose again, and his domineering color became even heavier and more domineering. Whitebeard, you can't use Conqueror Haki. Barrett roared, and his domineering color increased a bit, rumbling as he charged towards Whitebeard. The cracks in the sky widened, and crackling black lightning entangled them, confronting each other in the sky. Hula la a, boy, tell me your name. Whitebeard Murasakibara landed heavily on the bow and looked at Barrett with lightning eyes. Douglas Barrett. Barrett drew the painted halberd from his back and looked at Whitebeard coldly. Ha ha ha, kid, you are worthy of me to remember your name. Whitebeard laughed and jumped off the bow of the boat. Bai Xiaoji, this is a very good opponent. Let me give it a try. Behind Whitebeard, the man in kimono leapt up, drew out two long swords, and looked straight at Barrett. No, you are no match for me. The man in kimono didn't take Jin seriously at all and still looked at Barrett with burning eyes. Whether you are unwilling or afraid, your opponent can only be me. Jin took a step forward, the long sword in his hand wrapped in domineering power and flames. Ichisaurus. Flame bird. Cracking, the long sword was swung, the sword energy took shape, and a huge flaming bird flew towards the man in kimono along with a violent cry. Two swords style. Light and moon double dance. The man in kimono swung his sword with both hands and cut out a blade of energy, which collided with the giant flaming bird. With a bang, a powerful air wave unfolded, raising countless dust and scorching breath, forcing some people from the Whitebeard pirates to retreat to the stern of the ship. You are a strong man. I was presumptuous just now. The man in kimono took Jin's sword and felt Jin's strength. He saluted Jin with the spirit of Bushido and said, Kazuki Oden, please teach me. Then he held the knife in both hands and assumed an offensive stance. The Flame Kinga Jin. Seeing Kazuki Oden saluting, Jin was stunned for a moment, but quickly came to his senses and saluted Kazuki Oden. Seeing the two men saluting each other, both Barrett and the members of the Whitebeard pirates twitched their lips, as if something strange had appeared on the serious battlefield. However, as the battle began, this lack of seriousness instantly disappeared, and the weaker ones retreated a lot. Ding ding, flames were everywhere, swords were flying, and the two figures kept colliding on the shore. Violent roars continued, and within the hundreds of meters where the two were fighting, sword energy was everywhere and the earth was cut apart. This kid can actually compete with Odin. What kind of monster is this? Watching the fight between the two, some crew members on Whitebeard's ship began to discuss. Barrett was a little surprised. He didn't expect that Jin could fight with Kazuki Oden without losing. You know, in the original work, although Kazuki Oden was a little stupid, his strength was not bad at all. Although he is not as powerful as he is in the future, he has also reached the level of a great swordsman. If it weren't for Orochi's cunningness and Kurozumi Kurushi's trickery, it wouldn't be easy for Kaido to take down Kazuki Oden. Hula la a suddenly, Whitebeard smiled and said, "Boy, you have a good partner. You can actually compete with Odin." Ha 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 ha. Barrett laughed and sarcastically said, "Whitebeard, you think I'm you, only looking for some trash who slaughters civilians and swings his knife at the weak. Kid, what did you say? Apologize to your father now." Hearing Barrett insult Whitebeard, Marco stepped forward and glared at Barrett. The other captains were equally angry and glared at Barrett. "I said Whitebeard collected a boatload of garbage." Barrett was not afraid at all. He gripped the halberd tightly and black flames quickly wrapped around it. "Whitebeard, let me clean up the garbage for you." Scorching hell. Barrett swung his halberd, and the black flame on the tip of the halberd burst out completely, transforming into a giant black flame halberd light, flying towards the Whitebeard pirates. "You are worthy of it. Double blade style, rose petals." From the Whitebeard pirates, a muscular man holding two swords jumped out, brandishing the swords, and a pink sword energy met the halberd of Barrett. Banga with a loud bang, the pink sword energy was directly dispersed, and the black flame halberd's momentum remained unchanged, heading straight for Whitebeard. "Get out of your way." Air Shaka A, Whitebeard roared, took a step to the front, stretched out his fist, and punched towards the black flaming halberd. Kaka not far away, the space broke, and the black flame was blocked. It exploded with a bang and scattered on the ground indiscriminately. The area of AA dozens of meters around instantly turned into a magma land, bubbling with, gurgling, sounds. "Why is the temperature so high? He wants to kill us. This monster." Quote. Many pirates saw the ground turned into magma and looked at Barrett with fear in their eyes. "Boy, you passed." Whitebeard stomped Kusunokiri to the ground with a bang and looked at Barrett with a gloomy expression. "Has it passed?" Barrett had a sneer on his face. "Perhaps one day, your hometown will be massacred by your own sons." Holding the painted halberd, he walked towards Whitebeard step by step. "I also hope you can be calm and say you've done it." Barrett roared, kicked his feet, and with a bang, his figure was like a cannonball, and the halberd shot straight towards Whitebeard. Banga A Whitebeard raised Kusukimi Ri to block Barrett's attack. Air waves flew and some pirates were blown into the sea by the powerful shock wave. Captains such as Marco were also blown back several meters. Po Jun, Flame Blade. Barrett suddenly increased his strength, and the painted halberd burst out with an intense light. With the blessing of the light, it became very huge. The scorching heat made many people sweat profusely. Chapter 44 vs Whitebeard, Break It For Me. Barrett's face was ferocious. He mobilized all his strength and pressed down Kong Yunchi with force. A quickly retreated Whitebeard felt the intense heat coming from the halberd, his face suddenly changed and he shouted loudly. Marco and the others' faces changed drastically, and they showed their magical powers. Some jumped into the sea, some flew into the sky, and quickly moved away from the battlefield of the two. Boom! The painted halberd pressed down Kong Yunchi, and an extremely hot energy slammed heavily into the ground. Boom! The black flames raged, and the scorching heat instantly turned the ground into magma. Even the sea water behind Whitebeard was boiled, bubbling with, gurgling, sounds. Fucka A, it's such a high temperature, even higher than that monster in the navy. The sea water has boiled a. The scattered pirates looked at the magma on the ground and the boiling sea water, their foreheads were covered with cold sweat and their brows were twitching. Kid, you might die next. Whitebeard looked at Barrett with cold eyes. Feeling Barrett's strength, he changed from admiring his talent at the beginning to having a hint of murderous intent, because Barrett's strength made him a little afraid. In the entire Whitebeard pirates, besides him, only Odin could compete with him. Moreover, given the hostility Barrett has shown so far, if anyone else encounters Barrett, they will be doomed. It's time to get serious. Barrett tightly gripped his halberd, his face showing an unprecedented solemnity, because the man he was facing was known as the strongest man in the world. Moreover, Whitebeard is not the old and dying man he was later on. He is now in his prime and at the peak of his career. Empty Kraka A, Whitebeard slashed with his sword, and the space beside Barrett shattered like glass with a crack, crack sound. Boom! The space collapsed, and, puff, Barrett was severely injured, blood splattered, dozens of cuts were made on his body, and his body was blown dozens of meters away. Bar stood up, panting and raising the painted halberd in his hand. Flame Dragon. Roar! The flames turned into a dragon, and it let out an earth-shaking roar, rushing towards Whitebeard like an ancient behemoth. Air Shaka A. Whitebeard swung out with his right fist, and the space broke again. The fire dragon hit the fragments of space heavily. The scorching heat spread everywhere, and the area within 100 meters radius turned directly into a fire area. Barrett followed closely behind Yanlong with a halberd in his hand. He launched a sudden attack, passed through the shattered space, raised his halberd and smashed it hard at Whitebeard. Clang! Kong Yunchi instantly turned black to block Barrett's attack. Seeing this, Barrett launched a quick attack, chopping Whitebeard with his painted halberd. Ding 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 dinga, the sound of countless weapons clashing could be heard continuously. Barrett and Whitebeard moved at extremely fast speeds and kept fighting. Is this guy a monster? That's Dada, someone shouted in disbelief. If this guy doesn't die today, if you meet him in the future, you must avoid him in advance. A captain warned seriously. The pirates nodded seriously and watched the battle carefully, expecting Whitebeard to kill Barrett. Two major battles are ongoing. The land along the coast has long been unable to bear the weight. Part of it has shattered into countless pieces, and part of it has turned into hot magma. Benga at this moment, Barrett was chopped down by Kong Yunchi and flew dozens of meters away, and fell heavily on the rock wall on the coast. With a bang, the huge impact force collapsed the entire rock wall. Is that guy dead? He should be dead. Quote. The Whitebeard pirates and the people watching the battle all looked at the collapsed rock wall, and most of them prayed in their hearts that Barrett would never get up again. Cough cough, but there was no way Barrett could let them have their wish. He stood up unsteadily, his body in tatters and covered in blood. You are worthy of being one of the strongest men in the world. Barrett looked directly at Whitebeard. He knew that Whitebeard had never used his full strength in the battle with him from beginning to end. Because Whitebeard's top skill in this world, domination, was completely useless to him. Even the powerful ability of the tremor fruit was rarely used. He was suppressed solely by swordsmanship and physical skills. But at the same time, he was still unwilling to expose his own mythical beast species, and also wanted to try how much difference there was between him and the top strong men under normal circumstances. Hulala, boy, do you still want to fight? Whitebeard did not rush to attack. As one of the world's top strong men, he had his own pride. Instead, he stood with Kong Yunchi and looked at Barrett. After the battle just now, he had restrained his murderous intent towards Barrett. After all, it was rare to find a young man who could hold out for so long under his hands. Ha 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 ha, since this is a fight to the death, there is no reason to stop. Barrett stepped out of the ruins step by step, with a defiant and unyielding look on his blood-stained face. Barrett stared at Whitebeard with eyes as bright as lightning and shouted loudly. War! As he spoke, Barrett grasped the halberd in both hands and rushed towards Whitebeard at high speed. Hula la a Whitebeard held Kusunokiri with admiration in his eyes and laughed, come on. Benga a huge shock wave swept through Leah again, the scorching heat spread wildly, the magma ground spread again, even Kazuki Oden and Jin who were fighting in another place were affected and stopped panting. Whitebeard, can you let me feel the top power in this world? Barrett was swept away for more than 10 meters, staring at Whitebeard. He was very unwilling to accept the fact that he still hadn't seen the world's top skill, domination, after fighting for so long. Hulala, don't blame me if the kid dies. Whitebeard had a serious look on his face, and the Kusukimi Kiri in his hand was rapidly interweaving with a layer of black lightning. This momentum alone was enough to make Barrett feel tremendous pressure. This Isa A Ba-chan. Barrett stared intently, holding the halberd tightly with both hands. Black flames wrapped around the halberd. He gathered all his strength. He could feel that if he couldn't block this move, he would definitely die. Look, kid, this is the power you want to see. Whitebeard swung his sword, black and red lightning danced wildly, and a huge sense of oppression came from it. Boom Kakaa, the ground where they were standing collapsed directly. I can't stop it. I have to avoid it. Feeling death, Barrett's first reaction was to leave. You can't hide. If you hide, that's it for your whole life. Barrett's mind turned over and his eyes quickly became firm. He faced death and felt the knife. He wanted to break this restraint. Po Jun, Po Tien. Under the powerful pressure, Barrett's armament color broke through. He soared into the air, his whole body burning with hot flames, and the halberd on his hand turned into a giant black and red blade, which slammed heavily towards Whitebeard. Benga the two collided, and the huge halberd's blade pierced through the sky and the earth. The island was shattered and collapsed, and the river flowed back. A small part of the river bank of Somon Island disappeared directly. Barrett was also chopped and flew hundreds of meters into the sea. His life or death was unknown, and the newly made painted halberd was also broken into two pieces. You should be proud of yourself for leaving me a scar. Whitebeard held the kusunokiri in one hand and touched a small scar on his chest with the other hand. He looked at the sea in the distance with a look of shock on his face. Marcoa, Whitebeard yelled, send someone to bring that kid back to me. Yes, Dad. Marco, who was immersed in shock, immediately came to his senses and shouted to those who were still in shock, brothers, go and get him back for me. Roar! Everyone shouted excitedly, and those who were not users with special abilities rushed towards the sea in unison. Skuyard, you can't go. You have to go meet Dad with me first. Just as Scored was about to rush out, he was grabbed by Marco. Marco, why? Scored looked at Marco in confusion. Dad didn't say he was going to kill him. Marco let go of his hand and walked towards Whitebeard. Scored was silent for a moment, then followed silently. On the other side of Leah Island, seeing Barrett being shot down into the sea, Jin wanted to rush out with tears on his face, but was stopped by Kazuki Odin. Don't worry, Jin. Bai Xiaoji won't kill him. Jin didn't say much, he just ran quickly to the shore, looked nervously into the sea with tears in his eyes, not caring about his own strength at all. Kazuki Odin shook his head, wearing rags and covered in blood, and walked towards Whitebeard. Hula La seeing Odin coming over, Whitebeard laughed and said, Little Odin, you seem to be seriously injured. Bai Xiaoji, you are injured just the same. Kazuki Odin said casually, but he was extremely shocked in his heart. Although he had not been on Whitebeard's ship for a long time, he still knew Whitebeard's strength. It was no exaggeration to say that he was the best in the world. But unexpectedly, Whitebeard was actually injured by a young man. Marco and the others all widened their eyes with a look of disbelief. Hualala. I accidentally got cut. Whitebeard smiled calmly. After hearing Whitebeard's admission, Marco and the others fell silent. Barrett and King were not very old, as they could tell from their appearance, but the strength of Barrett and King was far beyond their reach, which made everyone feel frustrated. Dad found it, found it. At this moment, the pirates who were searching for Barrett shouted happily. Marco, go treat him. Whitebeard ordered, and then shouted to everyone else, follow me to the island. Roar! Everyone followed excitedly. Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audiobook YouTube channel Chapter 45 After the Battle Somon Island, late at night. Bai Tuan and his group surrounded Jin Tuan, with extremely serious and earnest expressions. They all looked at Jin intently and listened to Jin's story. Let me tell you, my boss once told me that a truly strong person would never bother to swing a knife at a weak person. Waving a knife at a weak person is an act of incompetence. After the war, Barrett was out of danger, and with Odin's introduction, King quickly became familiar with the Byakugan pilots. The banquet started with the white group, but who would have thought that as the banquet went on, everyone in the white group was attracted by the conversation between Jin and Odin, and they surrounded Jin and listened to his story. Jin was not afraid at all and started talking in a babble. We are pirates. If we don't plunder, how can we survive? Scored interrupted with disdain. You are Scored. Jin glanced at Scored and said disdainfully, my boss told me that your pirate group was destroyed by Captain Roger, so you have always resented Captain Roger, but you dare not face Captain Roger directly. So my boss told me that people like you are typical cowards, the kind of people I just mentioned who only dare to swing their swords at the weak. Asshole, I'm not a coward. Scored glared at Jin with a red face and thick neck. Skuyard calmed down. Marco, who was sitting next to him, grabbed Scored. That's right, Skuyard, why are you so excited? Listen to what he says. On the other side, Vista glared at Scored with dissatisfaction. Since arriving on the island, they knew why the war happened. It was all because Scored's men slaughtered civilians wantonly, and were encountered by Jin and Barrett, which triggered the war. As a swordsman, Vista has his own thoughts in mind and has always disdained things like massacring civilians. So he also had great disdain for Scored. Marco, let me go. Scored shook his arms, trying to break free from Marco. Vista's disdainful look hurt him deeply, and he wanted to leave. Squad, sit down. At this moment, Whitebeard spoke, his tone brooking no rejection. Scored was startled and sat down dejectedly. Jin, please continue. Seeing Scored sitting down, Whitebeard looked at Jin. Okay. Jin nodded, not panicking at all, and spoke slowly. In fact, my boss said that people like Scored are very dangerous because they are blinded by hatred. Once they are used by others, they may slash at their companions. Asshole, don't slander me. I would never draw a knife at my companions. Scored was furious and glared at Jin with red eyes. I think you do. Suddenly, a slightly weak voice came from behind everyone. Everyone turned around and saw Barrett, wrapped in bandages and with a pale face, walking towards them. Boss. When Jin saw Barrett, he jumped over. Barrett boy, I hope you can make it clear. I don't want my son to be wronged. Whitebeard looked at Barrett with cold eyes. Scored, if someone in the white group hid the truth from you and made you fight for Captain Roger, and almost all of your crew members were killed or injured. At this time, someone on the battlefield instigated you, saying that the man actually had a close relationship with Captain Roger and deliberately let you die, would you attack that man? Barrett ignored Whitebeard and looked directly at Scored. Upon hearing this, everyone turned their eyes to Scored. I will kill that traitor. Scored raised his head, his face became ferocious, his eyes flashed with murderous light, and he stared at Barrett viciously. What if that man is not a traitor, but clears a path for you to leave, and he alone covers your retreat? Barrett's slightly weak voice was like a flash of lightning, directly piercing through Scored's defense. How is this possible? There is no such great person. Scored roared angrily. But he didn't notice the flash of disappointment in Whitebeard's eyes. Some of the others agreed, some were thoughtful, and Marco looked around at everyone's expressions, keeping them in mind. What if that man is Whitebeard? Barrett whispered, but it exploded like a bomb. Everyone in the Whitebeard group looked at Whitebeard in unison. Hualala, my sons will never have such a day. I am Whitebeard. Whitebeard took a sip of wine and laughed out loud. Yeah, Daddy is the strongest in the world. Exactly, who has this ability? Quote. Everyone in the Beituan burst into laughter. Barrett smiled but said nothing. With the help of Jin, he walked to the side and sat down. He was indeed badly injured in today's battle. What he said just now was just a reminder to thank Whitebeard for showing mercy. However, whether the Beituan members listened or not was not something he could control. But there are also smart people in the huge white group, such as Marco. When Marco saw Barrett and the other man sitting down, he immediately came over and said in a low voice, Barrett, is this really possible? Barrett looked at Marco in surprise. He didn't expect Marco to come over, nor did he expect that the lazy Marco in the original book would be so wise. But think about it, Marco will be the chief steward of the White Tiger Pirates in the future, and he won't be able to manage it without a certain level of wisdom. Boss, today is not Marco. Your injury won't heal so quickly. Jin reminded from the side. Thank you. Barrett thanked him, and then said vaguely, it's not certain now, and it's hard to say in the future. This world not only has pirates, but also the navy and the world government. Who can predict what the future will be like? After listening, Marco fell silent and drank his wine silently. He only looked at Scored from time to time, with endless struggle in his eyes. When the time comes, things will work out. Instead of worrying, it is better to improve your own strength and then use your strength to crush everything. Barrett ate the meat while whispering a reminder as a way of repaying the favor. Although Marco became powerful later on, his strength was limited. This was because the Whitebeard pirates were too well protected and had never experienced any battles. As a result, his role was very limited in the subsequent Battle of Marineford. Thanks for the guidance. Hearing this, Marco was startled and raised his glass to toast Barrett. No, I should thank you for treating my injury. Barrett raised his glass and drank it all. He had drunk wine from this world before and it tasted very good. Although the alcohol content was high, with the extraordinary physiques of the people in this world, many people could drink a lot, not to mention someone with an extraordinary physique like Barrett. Hello Barrett, I'm Kazuki Oden. At this time, Kazuki Oden came over and sat down next to the three of them. Hello, Barrett replied with a smile. Although he didn't think much of Kazuki Oden, he didn't want to hit someone who smiled at him. Moreover, looking at Jin's appearance, it was obvious that he had developed a friendship with Odin, and they had a feeling of mutual appreciation. Ha 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 Kazuki Odin laughed, come on, let's have a drink. Odin, you bastard, don't you see that my boss is covered in wounds? Jin raised his glass and said dissatisfiedly, I'll drink with you. Ha 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 I didn't notice. Odin laughed and drank it all in one gulp. Jin, I'm not that fragile yet. Barrett raised his glass and drank it down in one gulp. Jin had no choice but to drink it all in one gulp. Seeing this, Marco, who had untied his knot, joined in. They toasted each other, talked about everything under the sun, and had a great time. On the other side, Bista was also an upright man, and he joined the battlefield carrying wine. Seeing this, Whitebeard also laughed and drank a few glasses with the others. Others became cheerful, gathering in twos and threes, laughing, talking and drinking. Only Scored had a complicated expression. He was silently thinking and drinking alone. The banquet was over and it was already dawn. The moon had quietly set at some point, and the white pirate's ship arrived in the morning light and left in the rising sun. Barrett and Jin stood on the broken shore and bid farewell to the white group. When the shadow of the ship faded away and they faced the sunlight, Barrett smiled and asked, Jin, how did you feel about this battle? Odin is very strong, but I can feel that there is still a gap between him and me. If we continue fighting, I will definitely lose. Jin said seriously. Yes. They are very strong. Barrett touched the scar on his chest and sighed softly. In the previous battle, he tried his best but still failed to stop Whitebeard from using his full strength. If Whitebeard had not held back with the last move, he would have died. But with that one blow, he overcame his fear and strengthened his faith, allowing him to make a breakthrough, and his armament hockey broke through the boundaries and reached the third stage. Overall, he made great progress this time. Next time, I will make you use your full strength. Barrett looked at the red sun with burning eyes, and a scorching light burst out of his eyes. Next time, I will definitely defeat you. Similarly, Jin was also thinking about Odin in his heart and listed Kazuki Odin as the first opponent to be defeated. Barretta At this time, a childish voice came from the sea. Why is she here? Barrett and the other man looked up and saw a ship slowly approaching. They looked at each other in confusion for a moment. Chapter 46 Let her stay. Barrett, don't move. I'll feed you. Jin, you are not allowed to drink until your injury is healed. Barrett, Embra Barrett looked at Delia, who was like a housekeeper, and felt overwhelmed. They had been on the journey for 3 days, and he had also had a headache for 3 days. Boss, I'm full. I'm going to go check out the front first. According to the nautical chart, the next island is called Gigi Island, and there is a kingdom on it. Jin put down the unfinished meat, ran out of the restaurant and flew into the sky. The main reason was that Delia was too annoying. In the past 3 days, not only Barrett, but also Jin suffered from her vicious hands. In order to avoid it, he ran very fast almost every day. Barrett, do you hate me? Seeing Jin flying away again and Barrett's slightly disgusted look, Delia's eyes suddenly turned red and she looked at Barrett with tears in her eyes. Delia, we just met by chance and have only known each other for a few days. You should not be thinking about us now, but yourself. You should know that it is not far to Gigi Island. You should think about how you will survive on Gigi Island. Barrett drank a glass of wine and said calmly. Barrett, are you going to kick me off the boat? Delia looked at Barrett pitifully. You forget that we are just a transaction. Barrett chuckled. Barrett, I don't have any family anymore. Can I just stay on your ship? Delia looked at Barrett with tears in her eyes full of pleading. No, there are no weaklings on my ship. Barrett shook his head and stood up. Just as he reached the door, he turned back and said, Delia, Jin has prepared some treasures for you. If you are careful, you should be able to live a rich life. After saying that, Barrett walked out of the kitchen without looking back. Wuhua watching Barrett leave, Delia's mouth drooped and she sat on the ground and started crying. Half an hour later, Jin came back and saw Barrett standing alone on the deck. He fell directly from the sky and landed next to Barrett. How far is it from Gigi Island? Barrett spoke softly while looking at the sea. At our current speed, we will be there in just 2 hours. Jin responded. 2 hours. Barrett whispered, then glanced at Delia who was busy in the room, and said, Jin, go get some of the treasures you prepared earlier. Boss, we know each other after all, so it's not a big deal to give her some treasures. Jin looked puzzled. In his impression, Barrett had never been a stingy person. Why did he become like this when he came to Delia? This is for her own good. Barrett explained, Delia is just a little girl. Once people know that she has so much treasure, many people will want to take advantage of her. Boss, I understand. Jin nodded and quickly ran back to the room. Barrett still stood on the deck, looking at the sea silently. Barrett, can I be part of your crew? At some point, Delia walked behind Barrett and spoke softly. No, you're too weak. Barrett didn't look back, but just shook his head slightly. I can become stronger, and I'm very knowledgeable about navigation. Aren't you looking for a navigator? Why can't it be me? Delia said anxiously. Can you sail? Hearing this, Barrett turned around and looked at Delia in surprise. They had been in contact for a few days, but Delia had never mentioned this matter. I have been learning from my uncle since I was a child. I have read all of his books and have some knowledge about sailing. However, I have never had the opportunity to sail on the sea, so I have never tried it. Delia said. We are indeed looking for a navigator, but our navigator cannot be a weakling, so please forgive me for not being able to agree. Barrett frowned, pondered for a moment, and shook his head. Delia is now 14 years old and her physical fitness can only be considered average. Even if she exercises in the future, the effect will not be too good. It is extremely difficult for her to become a strong person. Moreover, their current strength is not that strong. Once they encounter danger, they will not be able to guarantee Delia's safety at all. I can learn and work hard to become stronger. Seeing Barrett's refusal, Delia became anxious and stepped forward to hold Barrett's hand. Becoming stronger is very painful, you can't bear that kind of pain, so forget it. Barrett thought about it and decided to refuse. Delia's talent was average and she was a girl. If they wanted to train her, they had to find a powerful devil fruit. Otherwise, Delia's upper limit would only be the level of Major General at most, which was too dangerous for them in the early stages. You are not me, how do you know that I can't bear that kind of hardship? Delia said dissatisfiedly. Really? Barrett chuckled. Then how are you going to let me see it? Standing there and talking. Then what do you want me to do? Delia stared at Barrett with red eyes. You've seen what we usually do, the same 200. If you can finish them before we reach Gigi Island, I'll let you get on the ship and be our navigator. Barrett looked at Delia with a smile. He didn't believe that the gentle girl could accomplish it. Okay, you said so. Delia let go of Barrett, put her hands on the ground, and did push-ups. We are still about 40 minutes away from Gigi Island. If you don't speed up, you won't be able to finish it by then, and you won't have the strength left. Then I will have to throw you off the boat. Barrett didn't want Delia to get on board, so he deliberately made things difficult for her. Delia ignored Barrett and moved much faster than before, but her physical speed was also much faster. Barrett looked at the sea and didn't pay any attention. This set of movements included 6 skills including push-ups, squats, sit-ups, bunny hops, etc. Even when he first did it, he only did 500 of them, and it took him several hours. Even though it was much less now, in his opinion, it was impossible for Delia, who had never exercised, to complete it or stick to it. After a while, Jin came to the deck and saw Delia doing push-ups. He asked Barrett curiously, Boss, what's going on with Delia? She wanted to get on our boat, so I gave her a chance. I asked her to do 200 of each of our usual exercises before arriving at Gigi Island. If she finished, I would let her on the boat, Barrett explained with a smile, looking back. How can this be? Jin also didn't believe Delia could accomplish it. Those training methods were taught to him by Barrett. When he first started exercising, he only did 300 for each item. It was only after a few days that he adapted and gradually increased the number of reps. She insisted on doing it, and there was nothing I could do. Barrett shrugged, looking helpless. Delia didn't listen at all and kept doing push-ups. Being looked down upon by the 2 men, she walked much faster, and her sweat kept dripping onto the deck, soaking her clothes quickly. Barrett and the other man were in trouble. Barrett turned to look at the sea, while Jin left the deck directly. However, Delia's continuous push-ups still impressed Barrett, who used his observation hockey to watch silently. Time passed, and an hour passed in the blink of an eye. Barrett and Jin looked at the port of Gigi Island and fell into silence. In fact, they had already arrived at Gigi Island more than 10 minutes ago. Although Delia had only completed 3 items so far, Delia's persistence made him and Jin unable to speak. She fell down and got up, almost fainting from exhaustion. She pinched herself hard to let the pain stimulate herself, and her hands and legs became bloody. Boss, leave her here. Looking at Delia who was still exercising, Jin couldn't help but try to persuade her. Ah, Barrett sighed softly. Delia's persistence and belief moved him. Delia, get up. Barrett sighed. Barrett, give me some more time, I can still do it. When Delia heard this, she panicked instantly, and quickly grabbed Barrett, begging with tears in her eyes. I mean, we're here, you can stop. Looking at Delia's appearance, Barrett felt a sudden pain in his heart. Barrett, Delia became so anxious that she fainted and fell into Barrett's arms. I don't know if doing this will hurt you. Barrett whispered with a mysterious look in his eyes. Then, Barrett shouted to Jin, Jin, go buy some supplies and herbs for the medicinal bath. We're leaving now. Okay, boss. Jin nodded, jumped from the boat to the port, stepped on a stone slab, and then swaggered into the Gigi kingdom. His domineering appearance made some people at the port who were ready to make moves immediately give up their thoughts, and unknowingly saved themselves a lot of trouble. Chapter 47 Training Newcomers. The moon is high in the sky and the stars are vast. Barrett. Soon, she woke up and remembered the agreement she had made with Barrett before she fainted. Then she looked around and realized that she was in her room on the ship. They didn't abandon me for a moment. Delia's eyes were red, and she dragged her sore body, slowly walked out of the room and walked towards the deck. On the deck, Jin was exercising constantly, doing the same movements she had done before, but at a frequency many times faster than hers. Barrett sat cross-legged with Che lying flat on his legs, and it was unknown what he was doing. You're awake. Suddenly, Barrett opened his eyes and looked at Delia with a smile. Delia nodded with red eyes. Since you're awake, tell me, are you sure you want to join us? We're going to be pirates in the future. Barrett said seriously. I want to join you. Delia nodded seriously. Since you have decided, I will train you starting tomorrow. I will give you some time. If you cannot meet my requirements during this period, you will have to get off the ship, Barrett said coldly. And in my training, if you are not careful, you may die. Are you sure you want to join? I will definitely finish it. Delia nodded firmly. Since you have made up your mind, I will not stop you. But if you cannot meet my requirements, I will definitely let you get off the ship. After a moment of silence, Barrett stood up and looked Delia in the eye. I will definitely finish it. Delia was not afraid at all and met Barrett's gaze. The medicinal bath is ready for you. Go take the bath first, otherwise you won't be able to get up tomorrow. I've also prepared a training suit for you. You should wear it from now on. Barrett withdrew his gaze, pointed to the medicinal bath room, sat down cross-legged again, closed his eyes and said nothing. I won't let you abandon me. Delia looked at Barrett with a firm look in her eyes, then walked towards the room Barrett pointed to. Jin, do you think it would harm her if we keep her here? After Delia left, Barrett opened his eyes and let out a long sigh. Boss, there is still some time before we form a pirate group and go out to sea. Isn't it too early to deny Delia now? Jin turned over and sat on the deck, looking at Barrett with a smile on his face. That's right. We are still accumulating strength. Let's see if she can hold on and keep up. Barrett was stunned for a moment and burst out laughing. Hee hee. Jin chuckled. Boss, don't underestimate Delia. You saw her willpower during the day. I have a feeling that she should be able to hold on. Hearing this, Barrett looked a little dazed, and couldn't help but think of the bloody girl in the daytime. In that case, starting tomorrow, you will be responsible for going outside to see if there is an island with wild beasts and bringing back some meat, otherwise you will not get enough nutrition. Barrett said something, stood up and walked into the room. Hearing this, Jin's eyes widened, and he looked at Barrett's back with the corners of his mouth twitching. Ah, it's my bad luck. Jin sighed, turned over and started training. The next day, early morning. On the deck, Barrett was wrapped in bandages with a serious expression. Opposite him, Delia was wearing a ponytail and a black training suit, looking heroic. Delia, from now on, the set of 200 each that you did before must be completed in the morning. Barrett looked at Delia with a very serious expression and spoke the training plan meticulously. And it will increase by 10 every day. In the afternoon, I will tie you up with a rope and you will swim in the sea, starting with 1 hour. Just add 10 minutes every day, got it? Understood. Delia shouted back. Let's start. Barrett said coldly. Call. Delia let out a long sigh and started training according to the previous training. As she was training, she suddenly found that her body seemed to be stronger after the medicinal bath last night. Hurry up, you're going too slow, worse than before. If you can't hold on, just tell me and I'll let you get off the boat at the next island. Barrett shouted, sounding very stern. Huff. Delia said nothing, her movements became much faster, but her body was just as tired. Not enough, still not enough, the speed is too slow, you have to speed up. Now I have decided to shorten the time for these projects. You only have 2 hours. However, Barrett was like a devil, constantly scolding. Delia didn't say anything, she just kept speeding up, sweat flowing like water, and every time she did an exercise, there would be a large puddle of water on the ground. Soon, 2 hours passed and Delia collapsed on the deck like a dead fish. You can't stand this little bit of training. Hurry up and take a medicinal bath. Rest for an hour. After dinner, start afternoon training. In view of your excellent performance in the morning, as a special reward, you will swim for 3 hours in the afternoon. At this time, Barrett's devilish voice sounded again. Understood. Delia glared at Barrett fiercely, but did not refute. Instead, she struggled to get up and walk towards the medicinal bath room. Banga Delia closed the door angrily. I hope this girl won't hate me in the future. Barrett stroked his chin and muttered to himself. Suddenly, Jin descended from the sky carrying a giant beast on his shoulder. The deck creaked as he did so and the entire ship sank a bit. Brother, you can't hit a smaller one. The way you do it, it won't take long before the boat sinks. Barrett was startled and complained helplessly. If he hadn't had the ability to observe, he would have been ready to draw his sword. Boss, don't you think that with our appetite, it's still unknown whether this one is enough for the two of us to eat? Besides, it took me more than an hour to find this one. Jin put the behemoth down and glanced at Barrett with dissatisfaction. Yeah. Barrett touched his nose awkwardly, drew out the black che, and began to chop the meat. The knife flashed, and in just a few seconds, the giant beast was dismembered by him, and all the internal organs and unwanted things were stripped away. Jin, wait a moment. Barrett saw that Jin wanted to throw away the unwanted things, so he quickly stepped out to stop him. Boss, you don't want to eat these things, do you? Jin looked at Barrett with disdain. I'll use it. Barrett glared at Jin unhappily and explained, tonight, let's try using these things to see if we can catch some sea kings. The meat of that thing is not only delicious, but also contains extremely rich energy. As he spoke, Barrett licked his lips. He missed the sea kings very much. Not only were the meat of sea kings delicious, but they also contained extremely rich energy. When he was on Roger's boat, he and Rayleigh would go fishing for sea kings from time to make up for the energy consumed in their daily training. Boss, why didn't you tell me earlier? I'll get these done. Hearing about the sea kings, Jin also became greedy. The last time they ate them was 3 years ago. Later, Barrett ate a devil fruit and could not go to the sea. There were no sea kings near Lehuo Island, so they could only eat animals in the forest, and the taste was much worse. Don't get rid of the blood, or it won't taste good. Barrett gave an instruction, carried the cut meat into the kitchen, and temporarily acted as a chef. Delia can only make some vegetarian food and her grilling skills are average. Only Barrett, who was also born in the countryside in his previous life, knew how to make bacon. He used this method twice and was unanimously asked to be responsible for the meat in the future. I must find a chef as soon as possible. Barrett thought to himself as he processed the beast meat. After cleaning, Barrett used his ability to process the meat, and the boat was quickly filled with a rich aroma of meat. Jin and Delia, who had just finished taking a medicinal bath, came to the kitchen smelling the aroma of meat. They looked at the pieces of cooked meat and devoured them in big mouthfuls without caring about anything. Seeing this, Barrett changed from two-handed operation to one-handed operation, using one hand to move the meat and the other hand to hold the meat and chew it. Soon, the giant beast that Jin carried was destroyed. After Delia finished eating, she returned to her room and fell into a deep sleep. Jin and Barrett went to the deck and used life return to digest the energy, while Jin tempered his hands. Barrett used the energy to recover from his injuries. Whitebeard had broken several bones in his body before. Even with the magical skill of life return, he still hadn't fully recovered. In the afternoon, Barrett Tyrant came online. He tied a rope around Delia's waist and threw her directly into the sea, letting her swim, under the pretext of exercising her physical strength. Perhaps this is the straight man he mentioned before. Jin, who was standing by, watched with his eyebrows twitching and complained inwardly. Chapter 48 Fishing for Sea King's Evening, on deck. Barrett and Jin tied up several large pieces of the monster's internal organs with ropes, placed them in the sea, and fished with peace of mind. Delia was tied to the mast by Barrett, for fear that the noise made by fishing for sea kings would be too loud and he might accidentally fall into the sea. Both he and Jin were users of special abilities, so they would be completely helpless if they fell into the sea. Delia tried to resist, but it was completely useless. She could only accept the arrangement in humiliation. Soon, half an hour passed. Seeing no movement at all, Delia couldn't help but become suspicious. Barrett, Jin, how long have you been here? Why is there no Sea King as you said? Did you two say this on purpose to tie me up? No, don't talk nonsense. Barrett turned around and said to Jin, brother, do you think there are no Sea Kings in this place? Boss, this is the Grand Line, there are no Sea Kings there. Jin responded, we must have made a mistake and failed to attract the Sea Kings. No, that's how I did it with Master Rayleigh. How could there be any mistakes? When questioned about his professionalism, Barrett immediately refuted. Boss, think about it carefully. Jin did not give up and insisted that it was because Barrett was not skilled enough in the past. Could it be that something is wrong? Barrett couldn't help but frown, carefully recalling the details of fishing for Sea Kings with Rayleigh. These two bastards, wait. Seeing that the two ignored her, Delia's teeth were almost broken and she kept cursing in her heart. After a while, Barrett slapped his thigh and said happily, brother, I remember now. When we were fishing for Sea Kings, the boat was moving. This method was used to release the bloody smell of meat and attract Sea Kings. I'll go sail the boat. Jin didn't waste any time and quickly ran to the mast and raised the sail. Soon, the boat started to move slowly. Barrett held the rope tightly with a serious expression. Jin also ran out quickly, drew out his long sword and looked at him vigilantly. Is there really any Sea King? Seeing the two people looking like they were facing a formidable enemy, Delia couldn't help but believe it a little bit. She opened her eyes wide and looked at them with great interest. Time passed, and soon another half an hour passed, but still no Sea King took the bait, and the three of them were starving. Brother, why don't you go out and take care of tonight's meal first, and we'll study the Sea King tomorrow? Barrett held his stomach, looking frustrated. He thought it was something he was determined to get, so he didn't let Jin go hunting, just waiting for this Sea King meal. In the end, all his efforts were in vain. He was so hungry that his chest was sticking to his back, but he still didn't catch anything. Boss, it's late at night, aren't you afraid that I will get lost in the vast ocean? Jin looked at Barrett speechlessly. What should we do then? Barrett said with a wry smile. What else can I do? Let me go and eat vegetarian food tonight. Delia was so angry as she was tied up. She thought she could just listen to some noise and see something new, but in the end she had to do it herself and get the rice and flour, and was tied up for several hours in vain. Boss, why don't you listen to Delia? Jin asked tentatively. By now, he was very hungry, and eating vegetarian food was better than starving. Then, Jin, get ready. Barrett was just about to agree when he sensed something approaching under the boat using his observation hockey, and he excitedly pulled the rope and moved upwards little by little. Jin also used his observation hockey, so he naturally sensed the things under the boat. He held the knife in both hands and looked extremely excited. Then the Sea Kings are really coming. Seeing the two people change their expressions instantly, Delia became interested again and stared at them nervously. Barrett slowly pulled the rope until the bound internal organs floated to the surface, and then he controlled the rope to shake back and forth. Coming, Barrett yelled, pulling up the rope, and the entrails were thrown into the air. Roar! At the same time, a huge bull head rushed out of the water, directly rushing out 7 or 8 meters. Ember! Barrett shouted quickly. Call out! Jin flashed and stabbed the bull's head with a knife. Roar! The Minotaur twisted its body violently, creating a gust of wind and waves. The boat was pushed back dozens of meters and was about to capsize. Delia shouted, "Barrett, the boat is going to capsize, untie me quickly. Order it for me." Barrett leapt into the air, stomped hard on the other end of the boat, stabilized the boat, and quickly flew towards Jin. "Jin, we'll each take one side and just lift him into the air and kill him." Barrett arrived and grabbed the bull's horns with one hand. "Okay, boss." Jin grabbed the long knife with one hand and the other horn with the other. "Rise." Barrett and Jin worked together to lift the dozens-meter-long bull-headed sea king into the air. "Roar." The bull-headed sea king roared to the sky and twisted its body madly in the air. "There really are sea kings." Looking at the giant monster in the air, Delia was stunned, her beautiful big eyes wide open, afraid of missing any exciting scene. Barrett and Jin were not going to tolerate it. Jin loosened his grip on the long sword, condensed flames, turned them into flaming claws, and clawed into the bull's head. At the same time, Barrett's other fist was condensed with scorching heat, and he punched the other side. The bull-headed sea king didn't even have time to struggle. The whole bull head was roasted. The fragrance made Barrett and Jin almost start eating in midair. Then, the two of them carried the sea king back to the middle of the ship. It's really huge. Watching it up close, Delia felt like her world was too small. The two didn't care what Delia thought. Jin carried the sea kings, and Barrett returned to the ship first and placed several large barrels on the deck. Then, he shouted to the sky, "Jin, bring it over here. This thing's health is a big boost for us, we can't waste it." He had learned about Aquaman blood when he was alone on a deserted island, so he naturally knew the benefits and had helped Jin improve it once. Later, he studied and used the blood of sea kings to prepare medicinal baths, which was very effective. Therefore, when the two were on Roger's ship, their strength increased rapidly. This can be regarded as their unique secret medicine. However, Roger and Rayleigh later found out about it and began to do research on it. Through research, it was found that bathing in the blood of Poseidon does have limitations, which is that people must be in their growth stage, that is, they must be minors, and their bones must still be in the development stage. As a result, Buggy and Shanks became the subjects of research by Roger and Rayleigh. As a result of an operational error, Bucky accidentally drank too much and nearly exploded. The three of them then realized that they had to decide based on their physical condition and that the rest could only be used for medicinal baths. Finally, Barrett also offered the method of medicinal bath. In order to buy medicine, Bucky used up all the treasures in the box in less than a month. But the physical strength of the four people has also been greatly improved, so Bucky began to study the treasure map again. However, unlike the original work, it is not about greed for treasure, but about becoming stronger. "Okay, boss." Jin flapped his wings and slowly fell down. "Delia, come and help." Barrett swung his long sword and untied Delia. "What do you want me to do?" Delia's face flushed and she looked extremely excited. After all, this was her first time seeing a sea king. "I'll drain the blood in a while. If you see a bucket is full, change it quickly," said Barrett. "Okay." Delia agreed excitedly, trotting to the barrel and staring at it closely. "Call out." Barrett swung his long knife and cut off the fish's tail. He quickly caught it and put it aside. The blood of the sea kings is like bloody rain, flowing continuously. Not long after, all 5 large barrels were filled. Seeing that the blood was still flowing, Barrett quickly shouted to Delia, "Delia, go and bathe in the blood. It's good for you. The longer you can hold it, the greater the benefit will be. But remember to keep your mouth shut. You can't handle the energy in the blood right now. It is good." Delia hesitated for a moment, then quickly walked under the blood. As soon as the blood dripped onto his body, a burning sensation came from his skin, but he remembered Barrett's words, tightly closed his mouth, and endured it. After a few minutes, the Sea King's blood was drained and Barrett began to cut the meat. In just a few minutes, the dozens of meters-long Sea King turned into pieces of food. Barrett and Jin didn't care what was happening on the deck, they just grabbed the Minotaur's head and started eating. After eating and drinking, Jin was responsible for cleaning the deck, while Barrett began to prepare the medicinal bath. He prepared a total of buckets, 1 bucket for each of the 3 people. "If you don't double your training tomorrow, you'll be letting down tonight." Barrett held Delia, who was lying in the blood, and gave her a small bottle of blood, then put her in the thinnest bucket of medicinal bath. Then he took off his shirt and entered the most concentrated medicinal bath. After a while, Jin followed into the last barrel. The three of them fell into a deep sleep while quietly soaking in it. Chapter 49 Bullfight Arena Boom. Snappa Suddenly there was a muffled thunder, and the three people in the barrel were all startled. They looked up at the sky. There were lightning and thunder in the sky, and thousands of silver dragons were dancing wildly. The sky seemed to be torn apart and turned into countless pieces, creating a wonderful sight on the sea. The three were stunned by the sight of the sky. Call. Immediately afterwards, a gust of wind blew past. Bang bang, countless winds and waves constantly pushed the ship forward. Jin, go and start the propeller. After coming to his senses, Barrett jumped out of the bathtub and quickly folded the sails. Jin jumped out of the bathtub and ran towards the control room. You idiot, aren't you a navigator? Come with me to the control room and show me the way. After folding the sails, Barrett saw that Delia was still in a daze, and he became furious and ran to the control room with Delia in his hand. Boom kaka just then, after a thunderbolt, hail began to fall from the sky, hitting the boat with a thud. Call. Then there were gusts of wind again, the wind and waves became stronger and stronger, and waves appeared on the sea surface, and each wave was higher than the last. Hurry up and show us the way, or we will die. Arriving at the control room, Barrett grabbed the rudder and spoke rapidly. Delia forced herself to suppress her fear and looked intently at the waves ahead. After a moment, Delia shouted, turn right, we can't go against the wind, we have to go with the wind. Barrett said nothing and operated according to Delia's instructions. Crunch, the bow of the boat turned and the waves hit the hull, almost capsizing it. Fortunately, it was only a small wave. Keep turning full right, we have to turn around. Delia continued to shout as Barrett steered. Banga A before the ship had completed its turn, another wave came, higher than the previous one, and lifted the hull a little. Return the rudder and keep turning hard to starboard. Delia became calmer and calmer, and she was not as nervous as before when giving orders. Barrett didn't ask, but just followed the command silently. Soon, at Delia's command, the ship turned around. Barrett, hoist the sail. Seeing the ship turn around, Delia shouted excitedly. Barrett flashed and ran to the mast at high speed, staring at the hail, pulling the ropes continuously and raising the sails. Was gusts of wind blew, the speed of the ship increased rapidly, and it sailed at high speed in the choppy sea. But behind him, there were waves that were getting higher and higher, chasing him relentlessly like a death warrant. Jin, increase the horsepower to maximum. Barrett saw the waves getting higher and higher, and he yelled and ran to the control room, because Delia alone could not pull the rudder at all. When Barrett came back, Delia activated her command talent again. When daybreak came, the three of them finally broke away from the waves behind them. After a drizzle, a rainbow appeared across the sky. The three of them had no mood to appreciate it and leaned exhaustedly on the bow of the boat. At noon, the sun was high in the sky. You bastard, you stinky bastard. I've been exhausted all night, but not only did you not let me rest, you also made me train twice as hard. Wait for me. On the deck, Delia kept muttering to herself while doing her training. Delia, you only have 3 hours to do these moves. After you finish, rest for an hour and then start swimming. Barrett sat in the chair, pretending not to hear Delia's mumbling, and looked at Delia with a cold face. On the other side, Jin, who was also training, twitched his lips and wanted to ask, who said that one should be gentle to girls. Delia glared at Barrett fiercely, and her body honestly quickened her pace. After training for so long, she was not tired at all. She could also feel her own strength and stamina slowly increasing. She also guessed that it was because of the Sea King blood last night in the big barrel she was soaking in later. Huff. Delia continued to sweat, and soon, the deck training was completed. After resting for more than 10 minutes, she tied the rope herself and jumped into the sea, starting her water training which lasted until the evening. Then she devoured the flesh of sea kings in big mouthfuls. Barrett told her that the flesh of sea kings contained a lot of energy that could strengthen her physical fitness, so he asked her to find ways to eat more. The last one was a sea king medicinal bath. Each of the three people had a bucket, and when they woke up the next day, all three of them were on the deck. This cycle repeated itself, and 10 days passed in the blink of an eye. Delia's physical fitness became stronger and stronger, but Barrett still did not teach her any fighting skills and continued to hone her body. After 10 days of seeking medicinal bath, Barrett's body fully recovered. At the same time, they also followed the eternal pointer to Dressrosa. Dressrosa is now ruled by the Riku clan, which is King Riku in the original work. Although King Riku was very good to his people, the gold from heaven still made the country very poor. Barrett and his two companions had to exchange treasures for Baileys, and they had to exchange them with several families before they could exchange a bag of treasure for Baileys. Afterwards, Barrett gave most of the Bailey to Delia and asked Jin to go with her to purchase herbs and supplies. For this, Delia was quite happy and happily dragged Jin to make a big purchase. Barrett ignored her and went to the bullfighting arena alone to find Cyrus, the strongest man in Dressrosa in the original work. Cyrus was now only 17 years old, still working to gain recognition from his people and paying off his debts in the hippodrome. I wonder if this guy has hooked up now. At the entrance of the arena, Barrett couldn't help but murmur. In the original novel, Cyrus was the prince consort, but he didn't know if he had hooked up with her now. If he had, then his trip would have been in vain. Forget it, let's go in and take a look first. After staying for a while, Barrett bought the ticket at the entrance and walked into the arena. Get up. Fight back. Quote. As Barrett entered the arena, he heard a shout that overturned the dome. What a fucking noise. Barrett rubbed his ears. The huge shouting made him want to release a wave of domineering color. Barrett didn't look for a seat, but lay on a railing and looked around. The arena was very large, with at least 3,000 people sitting inside. All of them looked crazy, shouting with red eyes. The condition of these people involves one of the three poisons, gambling. This is also a large part of Dressrosa's fiscal revenue. You know, the large arena in Dressrosa is not like the bullfighting arena in the previous life. It is a place for sword fighting competitions, and occasionally large-scale competitions are held. Because the content of the competition is too bloody and violent, children are prohibited from entering to watch. But it is obvious that King Riku is not as good at management as Ming Jie, nor does he have Ming Jie's strength. Most of the people fighting here are locals, either atonement or in order to join the king's army and eat the emperor's food. Cyrus in the original book was the one who ate the imperial grain to the maximum, and finally became a royal consort. If Mingay had not arrived in the end, Cyrus might have become the king directly. But at the same time, the swordsmen or other people participating in the competition are not very strong. Even if they are talented, they are limited by their vision. I don't know what Cyrus is like. Barrett watched several games. He was very excited in the first game, but now he is very bored. If he was not waiting for Cyrus, he would have wanted to leave directly. Now please welcome our undefeated fighter Cyrus and our powerful fighter Ali. Just as Barrett was bored, the sound of Cyrus about to start a duel was heard in the arena. The wait is finally here. Barrett turned his gaze and looked down. In the center of the arena is a large disc, about several hundred meters in diameter, which is somewhat similar to the Colosseum in the 300 Spartans. Soon, a sturdy man holding a big sword and a sturdy man holding a big axe walked into the field from two directions. The two men are of similar height, about 3 meters tall. Although their faces are a bit rough, they can still be seen to be somewhat immature, and it is obvious that they are not very old. That must be Cyrus. Cyrus is easy to recognize. In the original book, Cyrus is a swordsman and uses a big sword. Benga at this moment, the two people below began to fight. In the first collision, the two seemed to be evenly matched in terms of strength. What? The first collision between the two immediately caught Barrett's attention, especially the boy with the axe, and he began to pay close attention. Bang bang, Cyrus and his men kept fighting, their weapons kept colliding, and the sound of violent collisions was endless. Interesting. Barrett's mouth curled up. With his observation hockey, he easily detected the movements of the two. Cyrus was indeed much stronger, but it was only his fighting skills. In terms of strength, the young man named Ali is obviously much stronger than Cyrus, as can be seen from Cyrus's slightly trembling hands. This made Barrett more interested in Ali than Cyrus. Benga there was a violent collision between Cyrus's greatsword and Ali's great axe. An accident happened. Ali's axe broke under the weight. Cyrus had no time to restrain his strength and the sword chopped towards Ali's head. Ali was stunned by the sudden situation. Get away quickly. Cyrus shouted anxiously. Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audiobook YouTube channel Chapter 50 Johnson What? Kill him. This scene immediately caused the adrenaline of the people in the arena to surge. The timid ones covered their eyes, while the bold and crazy ones all stood up. Benga A. However, at this moment, a black arm blocked Cyrus's sword. It was Barrett who saw something was wrong and took action in advance. Who are you? Cyrus was pushed back several steps. Seeing that Ali was fine, he breathed a sigh of relief and turned his gaze to Barrett. I'm sorry, this young man is someone I have my eyes on, and I don't want him to die like this. Barrett grinned. Who the hell is this bastard? How does this battle count? Damn you bastard, who told you to? Quote. Before Cyrus could reply, the audience in the arena came to their senses and started cursing loudly. A bunch of rubbisha, Barrett's eyes fixed, and he shouted, shut up, boom. The domineering color was activated, and an extremely domineering will spread in the arena, and an extremely powerful mental will pressed towards the stands. Bang bang in an instant, in the arena, except for the few rows farthest away, everyone else was knocked unconscious. Some fell to the front row, and some fainted on the spot. The rest of the people covered their mouths in fear, afraid of making any sound. Athissa, what kind of power is this? Cyrus knelt on one knee, sweating profusely, looking at Barrett with fear in his eyes. Swordsman, I'm not that strong. Are you interested in going with me to see the outside world? Barrett retracted his domineering look and grinned at Cyrus. Excuse me, sir, I have my country and my lover. After a moment's silence, Cyrus shook his head. Damna A hooked up so early. Barrett complained secretly, feeling a little unhappy. Barrett glanced at the unconscious Ali, and his resentment disappeared a lot. If he had not met Ali, Barrett might have thought of a way to kidnap Cyrus, but when he met Ali, it would be unprofitable to go to great lengths to recruit him. Well, that's a shame then, good luck to you. Thinking of this, Barrett stopped hesitating and jumped with Ali in his hand, leaving the arena directly. Who is this person and what kind of power does that person have? Cyrus frowned and muttered to himself as he watched Barrett leave. How terrifying. Who was that person just now? That's right, no one moved, everyone fell down. Quote. As soon as Barrett left, the arena returned to its previous bustle. However, all this had nothing to do with Barrett. At this moment, he was carrying the unconscious Ali and flying in the sky at a high speed. It didn't take long for them to reach the boat. After a while, Ali woke up and looked at Barrett in a daze. Brother, who are you? Damna A. When Barrett heard Ali's voice, his eyes widened, because Ali's voice was completely like a child's voice. A sturdy man with a child's voice is really an eyesore. Barrett took a deep breath and asked curiously, little brother, how old are you? Brother, I'm 12 years old. Ali responded. Mad, that was sloppy. Barrett felt terrible. He didn't expect that such a strong man was only 12 years old. It was really eye-catching. Little brother, you are so young, why are you in the arena? After a moment of silence, Barrett asked. Because my family was poor and I was the oldest and the one who loved to eat, my father sold me there. Ali hesitated for a moment, but decided to tell the truth. After all, it was Barrett who saved him. Hearing this, Barrett was stunned for a moment. He knew that there was human trafficking in this world and that countless people were sold by their biological parents, but he never expected that he would encounter it one day. But from Ali's description, his father had no choice but to make the choice. For this reason, Barrett still asked, do you want to go home? I can take you back. No, brother. I was sold to the arena when I was 10 years old. Later, I helped the arena make money. I went home once, but there was no one there. According to people around me, my father sold me and left with my brothers and sisters. Ali spoke calmly, and it was obvious that he had already let go of the matter. How about you follow me from now on? Barrett asked. Brother, I'm a big eater. Ali said hesitantly. It's okay. The most abundant thing on the sea is food, and I can eat much more than you can. Barrett smiled indifferently. Then let's make it clear first, brother. You can't chase me away just because I can eat. Ali said seriously. Don't worry, I won't chase you away. You can call me boss from now on. Barrett said with a smile. Okay then, boss, I'll follow you from now on. Hearing that he could have enough to eat and would not be driven away, Ali agreed very readily. Hey hey, Barrett laughed. By the way, I just heard you Ali in the arena, is your real name Ali? My original name is Johnson, and Ali is the name given to me by the people in the arena. Ali shook his head in response. So should I call you Johnson or Ali from now on? Call me Johnson. Now that I'm out, I won't be called Ali anymore. Okay, I'll call you Johnson from now on. Barrett patted Johnson on the shoulder and said seriously, Johnson, there are a few rules on my ship. You must remember them. Boss, you say. Johnson nodded, his expression extremely serious. Barrett said, first, you must not betray me. If you betray me, I will hunt you down to death no matter where you are. Second, you cannot attack your companions. If you do, all my crew members will regard you as an enemy and will hunt you down. Third, you cannot attack civilians. That is a cowardly act. As a strong person, you can only wield your sword against those who are stronger than you. Boss, I understand. I'll remember it. Johnson nodded seriously. Yes. Barrett said, by the way, I will train you in the future. You must be prepared. My training is very hard. Bang bang. Johnson patted his chest and said confidently, don't worry, boss. I never resist training. Ha 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 ha. Barrett laughed and said, okay, remember what you said. Don't complain about the hardship or you'll have nothing to eat. Absolutely not. Hearing the food threat, Johnson immediately patted his chest and made an assurance. Okay, I'll remember what you said. Barrett said with a smile, let's go eat something and wait for my two companions. Okay, boss. Hearing about eating, Johnson's eyes lit up and he followed closely behind Barrett. After the battle just now, he was already starving and wanted to have a big meal. But soon, his appetite, which he was so proud of, suffered a blow, because Barrett gave him the meat of sea kings, which was only a dozen pounds and he was full. Looking again, Barrett never stopped. This hit him, but at the same time, it also strengthened his belief in following Barrett, because someone who could eat so much as Barrett could eat his fill, so how could he not be full with his small stomach? The setting sun is as red as blood, and the afterglow of the sunset falls on the sea, like a peerless picture that makes people intoxicated. Delia and Jin, who had disappeared for a day, returned to the ship carrying large and small bags. However, they were both stunned when they saw Johnson doing various exercises on the boat. Who are you? Delia asked curiously. Hello sister, I am the boss's new crew member, my name is Johnson. Johnson stopped exercising, stood up and grinned. Hearing Johnson's childish voice, the two of them got goosebumps all over their bodies, especially Delia, who felt a chill down her spine when being called sister by a burly man covered in goosebumps. Uncle, I'm only 14 years old. It's unreasonable for you to call me sister. Delia said dissatisfiedly. I'm only 12, so it's reasonable for me to call you sister, Johnson explained seriously. Bang bang. When Jin and Delia heard Johnson's age, they dropped everything. Johnson's figure and appearance were totally inconsistent with the age of 12. The only thing that might have been consistent with him was his thick childish voice. Call. Delia took a deep breath and said suspiciously, you are really 12 years old. Yes, sister. Johnson nodded seriously. Oh my god. Delia looked incredulous. Hello brother, you can call me brother Jin or boss Jin from now on. Jin accepted it quickly. He had spent the longest time with Barrett and had been on Roger's ship. He had basically seen all kinds of races in the New World. Although Johnson shocked him a little, he was not surprised. Hello, brother Jin. Johnson said. By the way, where is the boss? Jin asked. The boss was in the kitchen preparing the meat, so I came out to exercise since I had nothing to do. Johnson licked his lips, obviously looking forward to the upcoming delicious food. Yeah. Jin nodded, then pointed at Delia and introduced her. Johnson, her name is Delia, you can call her sister, or Delia. Hello, sister. Johnson greeted. A dona ta a Delia waved her hands quickly and said with a wry smile, A Johnson, just call me Delia from now on. This, Johnson was puzzled, his face full of confusion. Listen to her and call her Delia. Jin patted Johnson's shoulder. Let's go. Come with me and take the things inside. Johnson nodded, and walked towards the room with Jin, carrying the things, while Delia followed behind in a daze. Chapter 51 Encounter with Sakaski in the waters of Alabasta, on the Barrett ship. The sun is scorching and the heat is surging. Wuxia on the deck. Johnson and Delia were exercising separately, their sweat dripping all over the floor and then evaporated by the high temperature. You still have 1 hour left. If you can't finish it, I'm sorry, but I will reward you with an extra hour of extreme training. Barrett, wearing sunglasses, a short-sleeved shirt and beach pants, leaned leisurely under a parasol, drinking juice and watching the two people training with his observation hockey. Hearing this, Johnson suddenly increased his speed, moving at least twice as fast as before. Damn bastard, stinky bastard. Delia pouted and cursed under her breath as she sped up. In the past half-month, Delia didn't know how many times she scolded him. At first, he would sulk, but now he is completely immune to it and just deals with it by doing more training. And he always trains with two people. After the training, Johnson will naturally let her know what a resentful look is. Boss, we're in Albana now. Do you want to go down and buy supplies? At this time, Jin's voice came from the bow. Jin, speed up the propeller, let's leave Albana as soon as possible. Barrett frowned and was silent for a while, then spoke seriously. Okay, boss. Jin didn't say much and ran to the mechanical room. Rumbling, after a while, a loud roar was heard, and the speed of the ship suddenly doubled, breaking through the wind and waves and leaving the Albana waters at a high speed. Half an hour later, the roar stopped, and Jin returned to the deck and asked Barrett, Boss, why aren't we resupplying in Albana? Is it because of what happened last time? Jin, you must remember that it is better to be careful than to go wrong. Barrett explained, although the incident happened a few years ago, it doesn't mean it has been forgotten. This place has become a popular destination, and there are too many people here, so we have to be cautious. After all, we are still in a dormant period, so it is best not to expose ourselves if possible. Moreover, the Navy has stronger control over the first half of the Grand Line in the Four Seas. I understand, boss. I will continue to speed up the ship and leave Alabasta as soon as possible. Jin nodded and turned to walk towards the engine room. Delia heard the conversation between the two and looked at Barrett with a puzzled look, but before she could open her mouth, Barrett's cold voice came again. Don't look. Even if you look, I won't tell you. You're too weak and you're not one of my crew members, so you don't deserve to know. Also, because of your pause, you need to add an hour of extreme training. Barrett said this calmly, picked up the juice again, and leaned back in his chair leisurely. Delia was stunned for a moment after hearing this, then she continued training silently, her movements becoming even faster than before. Johnson didn't say anything and continued to concentrate on training. This was a habit he developed in the arena. He would do whatever the instructor told him to do. Huff, huff of the two men kept sweating and the boat was sailing at a very fast speed. Stop the ship ahead. However, not long after the ship sailed, a warship blocked Barrett's ship. Barrett quickly stood up and climbed onto the bow of the ship. Looking over, he saw a naval rear admiral leading the opposite warship. The rear admiral was about 30 years old, with a resolute face, a sparse beard, a red suit, and a white hat on his head. The white cloak of justice behind him danced in the wind. Interesting. Barrett pursed his lips and recognized the major general opposite him at a glance. It was Sakaski, the one called Red Dog by many fans, Akainu. But to be honest, Barrett actually admires Akainu very much. Akainu is decisive and has his own persistence. If Akainu didn't hate pirates so much, he would want to pull Akainu on board. Jin, stop the boat. I'm going to meet this rear admiral. Barrett shouted to Jin in the engine room, then stood at the bow and waited quietly for the warship to approach. As the words fell, the roar of the propeller slowly disappeared, the speed of the ship slowed down, and the warship blocked the way in front of the ship, only about 10 meters away. Excuse me, Major General, is there something wrong that has stopped our ship? Barrett looked at Akainu with a smile. This person must not be an ordinary person. Sakaski stared at Barrett. He could clearly feel a strong sense of oppression from Barrett. Moreover, the more Sakaski looked at Barrett, the more familiar he seemed, as if he had seen a similar face somewhere before. Sir, have we met somewhere before? Sakaski asked. Hearing this, Barrett's heart tightened. He was very sure that he had never seen Sakaski before, and Sakaski could not know him. So the only possibility was that his information had been thoroughly investigated by the Navy and he had a connection with the Navy. So, he pretended to be relaxed and smiled, Mr. Major General, you are joking. I am just an ordinary businessman. I don't have the opportunity to meet a big shot like you. Really? You don't look ordinary at all. Sakaski stared at Barrett with a look of deep vigilance in his eyes. Ha ha. Barrett chuckled. Major General, now that you have finished your interrogation, can we leave? Or do you need to search our merchant ship? Sakaski tilted his neck to look at Barrett and his cruise ship, and saw that besides Barrett, only Johnson and Delia were training on the deck. And through his observation hockey, he could say with certainty that there was a fourth person on the ship, but he had been in the room on the ship and had not come out. Sir, please call the people in the room out. I need to take a look. Sakaski asked with a frown. Mr. Major General, my companion has an ugly face and is not suitable for meeting people. Barrett narrowed his eyes. He didn't expect that Sakaski would actually ask to see Jin, but with Jin's strange attire, once he appeared in front of people, it would definitely attract Sakaski's attention. It's okay, I won't discriminate against others. Sakaski looked at Barrett fiercely, as if he would attack if Barrett refused. Boss, since this Major General wants to see me, why not let him see me? With a chuckle, Jin walked out of the machinery room. When Sakaski saw Jin's attire, a bolt of lightning flashed through his mind. That was the photo they saw in the marshal's office after they were awarded the title. Kong also told them seriously that if they met the two people in the photo, they must do their best to capture them. And in their class, only he and two others knew about these two photos. Barrett, Jin. Sakaski's voice was low, his eyes turned cold, and he stared at Barrett and the other man. So you are still registered in the Navy? Barrett said calmly, Mr. Major General, you and your men could have left safely. But now, Barrett whispered, shaking his head and turning to leave the bow. How can I let you leave so easily? Sakaski leapt up and flew into the air using the moon step. His fist turned into a magma fist, and the scorching heat was no less than that of Barrett's hand. The dark doga, Sakaski punched Barrett and the other man with his right fist, and the magma turned into a huge dog head, emitting scorching heat, and blasted towards Barrett. Magma, Barrett, run. Akainu's attack directly frightened Delia and Johnson, and Delia screamed in panic. You guys continue training. Today's training is not complete yet. Barrett didn't turn around. He didn't care about Sakaski's attack at all. Instead, he looked at Delia and the others with a stern face. Before the two could open their mouths, a sharp blade light flashed past, and Akainu's attack was directly annihilated in midair, leaving the two men stunned. Major General, you shouldn't have let me out. At this time, Jin's figure also appeared above Sakaski, with a long sword wrapped in flames, and he looked at Sakaski with squinted eyes. Ito Ryu, divine bird. Cracking, the flaming sword was swung, and a giant flaming bird cried out to the sky, rushing towards Sakaski with infinite pressure. Hold it, big fire. Sakaski's face was grim. He could feel the energy exploding from the giant flaming bird. His whole body turned into a ball of hot magma and rushed towards the big bird. Boom! Flames flew, the sea level was boiled by the scorching heat, and the violent shock wave created a wave that pushed the ships and warships hundreds of meters away. Is this something that humans can achieve? Who is that? He can actually stop Major General Sakaski. Quote. On the warship, countless sailors were stunned and muttered to themselves. Brother Jin is so strong. Johnson had an excited look on his face, staring at Jin in the air with burning eyes. Jin is so powerful. Delia was astonished. She had seen Barrett in action and knew he was powerful, but she didn't expect Jin to be so powerful. Chapter 52 Change of Plan. Break it for Maya. In midair, Sakaski roared, the temperature around him soared again, and a huge ball of violent fire appeared in the sky. Boom! The giant flaming bird was directly assimilated. Magama explosion. Boom! The huge ball of fire carried endless energy and rushed straight towards Jin. One sword style, Fire Dragon King. Jin's expression turned serious, his long sword was quickly covered with a layer of black, and then a ball of fire ignited, and he looked seriously at the big ball of fire. Roar! The sword energy turned into a giant flaming dragon, roaring and rushing towards the giant flaming ball. Bossa a dragon, Dragon a. Johnson's face was full of excitement and he kept pointing to the sky excitedly. This is fake. Delia's eyes were dull, and she looked at the giant dragon in the sky with disbelief. Damn it! He plagiarized and hid it secretly. Barrett looked at the giant fire dragon in the sky with hatred. This move of Jin was extremely similar to his fire dragon. It was obvious that he had plagiarized it by Jin. The most outrageous thing was that he even named it Fire Dragon King. Dragon, how can this be? Quote. Also on the warship, countless sailors had dull eyes, expressions of disbelief. Boom! The fire dragon and the big ball collided, and the air turned into a sea of AA fire, covering an area of AA hundreds of meters in radius. The sea water below was baked and bubbling. Roar! In the flames, Sakazuki roared, and the temperature of the flame ball became even stronger, with a tendency to assimilate the fire dragon. My flames are useless. Jin raised his eyebrows, then raised his long sword. The long sword quickly turned black, and the rich armed color seemed to be dripping. In that case, I won't use fire. Jin drew out another long sword and swung both swords continuously, leaving countless afterimages in the air, and countless black sword auras condensed in front of Jin. Dual blade style, phantom sword dance. The long sword fell, and a huge sword energy of dozens of meters was formed. It had tremendous power, as if it was going to overturn the world and go straight towards the flames. Jin watched breathlessly, his eyes sparkling and his face filled with extreme excitement. Shit, when did Jin figure this out? Looking at the huge sword energy in the sky, Barrett was shocked. This was the move he had boasted about to Jin before, but he didn't expect that Jin actually researched it out. As for the others, they were all in shock and daze, staring blankly at the huge sword light hundreds of meters in the sky. Flame giant, red flame lotus. Akainu in the flames also felt the threat of the sword light. He mobilized all the energy in his body and transformed into a flaming giant more than 10 meters tall, erupting a flaming lotus that was tens of meters long. Boom! The blade fell and slashed on the flaming lotus. Rumbling, the lotus was chopped into pieces, turning into flames that fell into the sea with a sizzling sound. The sea water boiled and bursts of steam rose up. Roar! Seeing the lotus shattered, the fire giant in the air roared to the sky and punched the sword light heavily. Bangay, the huge impact force of the blade directly smashed the fire giant into the sea. It hit the sea with a plop. The intense high temperature made the sea water boil in an instant. The sizzling sound was endless, and the sea water was bubbling, gurgling. Akainu is so strong. Barrett was also shocked when he saw Sakazuki falling into the sea. Although Akainu was strong in the original work, that was later, and the development of Akainu's fruit was obviously different from the original. Not to say that he was stronger than the original, but there were a lot more strange and weird things, which enriched his combat skills, and they were all very powerful. In this battle, if King's armament Haki was not stronger than Akainu's, and the battle was not on the sea, it would be impossible for King to end the battle so quickly. Major General Sakazuki. The Major General is a fruit ability user and cannot swim. Go into the water and save him. Quote. Everyone on the warship came to their senses and jumped into the sea to rescue Akainu. Basa. At the same time, Jin also returned to the boat, his face looking pale and solemn. Leave first to A. Barrett saw that Jin seemed to be hesitant to speak, so he patted him on the shoulder and walked towards the mechanical room. After Barrett left, Johnson came over with an excited look on his face, looked at Jin with admiration, and said excitedly, "Brother Jin, you are so awesome. How did you make that giant dragon and that blade light? It's so cool. Can you teach me? I will definitely learn it well." Delia on the side also looked at Jin expectantly. Johnson, let's talk about this after we leave here. Jin patted Johnson on the shoulder, turned around and walked towards the mechanical room with a serious face. The two were left looking at each other in bewilderment. Boss, I don't think we should go to Sihai anymore. Jin walked into the mechanical room and said seriously. Tell me your reasons. Barrett frowned. Boss, after today's battle, I can feel that the strength of the Rear Admiral is more than this. If we were not at sea, he would be subject to many restrictions. It would not be so easy for me to take him down. Jin spoke seriously, with a look of great caution on his face. That Major General is different. He is one of the 3 monsters of the Navy, a user of the natural magma fruit ability, Sakazuki. His overall strength is comparable to that of an elite Vice Admiral in the Navy. Barrett responded. No wonder. Jin suddenly realized, and then continued, but boss, I think we still can't go to the 4 seas, because after a battle today, the Navy will find out that we have appeared again, which will naturally bring back their memories of Albania, and they will definitely pay special attention to us, so we need to find a place to stay and accumulate strength. You're right. Barrett nodded seriously. From the moment Akainu recognized the two men, he knew that the Navy had never given up investigating them. However, for some unknown reason, the Navy had not issued a bounty order. Now that Jin mentioned not going to Zhui, Barrett had to think carefully. Now there were not only him and Jin, but also Johnson and Delia. And given what he did in Albania, neither the Navy nor the world government would let him off easily. Once they are found, powerful forces will definitely be sent to round them up. He and Jin could escape if they couldn't win, but Johnson and Delia had nowhere to escape. Thinking of this, Barrett quickly made up his mind and said to Jin, "Jin, we will change our route and go to the Seven Waters City. We need to build our own ship." "Boss, are you ready to form a pirate group?" Jin asked excitedly. "No." Barrett shook his head and said, "We are just going to customize a ship and then go directly to the Sabayati archipelago to buy slaves." Buying slaves. Jin looked at Barrett with a puzzled look on his face, full of confusion. Having been with Barrett for so long, he naturally knew that what Barrett hated most were drugs and human traffickers. He didn't expect that Barrett would actually think about buying slaves. "Yes, since we can't go to Zhui and recruit the people we like, then we might as well buy some slaves aged 12 or 13 and train them ourselves." Barrett explained with a smile that since he couldn't travel around the world and had to lie low to develop, he might as well buy a group of young slaves to train, even though their talents might be a little worse. But with his training methods, those who survived were more than enough to serve as the backbone, and with Ryan's previous instruction, his ability to teach was not too bad either. As for loyalty, the brainwashing culture of the previous life was so extensive. "Okay, boss, I'll go find Delia and ask her to point us in the direction. We'll change course." After hearing Barrett's explanation, Jin became excited and ran out of the machine room in a hurry. If Barrett operates like this, in a few years they will become a force that cannot be ignored at sea. "I'm sorry, heroes from all over the world." Barrett whispered with regret on his face. According to his idea, he was originally planning to use the advantage of being a time traveler to subdue some future strong men and use them as cadres. He would hide them in the Four Seas and secretly accumulate strength, and wait until Roger reached the top, then he would go to the New World and conquer a sea area to dominate it. However, man proposes, God disposes, or perhaps it was the obstruction of fate and the arrangement of heaven that made them meet Akainu on their journey, thus exposing their identities. This forced him to change his mind and make new plans. "It's good this way. At least I can meet more powerful people in the future, which makes life more exciting." Barrett chuckled. Sensing that the ship's direction had completely changed, Barrett pulled down the propeller with a click. Rumbling, with a huge roar, the ship broke through the waves and headed in a new direction. At the same time. Alabaster Waters, Sakaski warships. Sakaski sat at the bow with a gloomy face, looking at the sea level with cold eyes, a look of deep unwillingness on his face. The surrounding navy was silent as a mouse, not daring to make a sound. "We're heading back to headquarters." After a moment, Sakaski withdrew his gaze, stood up coldly, left a word, and walked back to the room with a sullen face. The navy left behind did not dare to refute at all and quickly took action. Chapter 53 Bounty Naval Headquarters, Admiral's Office. Sora sat at the top, while Vice Admiral Suru, Zephyr, Rhine, and Sakaski sat on the sofa below. "Sakaski, you just said you saw Barrett and Jin, and had a fight with them." After listening to Sakaski's description, Kong immediately called Vice Admiral Suru and the Zephyr couple to his office and asked Sakaski to tell the story again from beginning to end. "Yes, Marshal Kong." Sakaski nodded, then said seriously, "But Barrett didn't make a move, only Jin made a move, and I'm no match for him." Sakaski spoke frankly. Although he felt unwilling to lose to Jin, he did not lie. "Commander He, what do you think?" Kong frowned and turned his gaze to Lieutenant General He. "Marshal Kong, Barrett and the other man disappeared for such a long time, and now they suddenly appear and defeat Sakaski. It is obvious that they were practicing during the time they disappeared." Vice Admiral Suru's eyes flickered with wisdom. "Also, according to Sakaski, they are not just two this time, but four. Obviously, Barrett and the other two should be preparing to go out and form their own pirate group." After Vice Admiral Suru finished his analysis, his expression turned serious. Also, we have no idea how strong Barrett and his partner have become after 3 years of training. Plus, given this person's intelligence, we should be careful. Staff Officer He, keep an eye on us during this period. Don't let Barrett take advantage of any loopholes. Suru's words immediately made Kong alert, because Barrett planned an attack on Alabasta, which almost caused the Navy to fall apart. Fortunately, the Navy invited Zephyr back, which allowed the Navy to be reborn. If it happens again, they won't be sure of achieving Nirvana again. I'll keep an eye on it. Vice Admiral He nodded seriously. Zephyr and Rhine, who knew the inside story, looked at each other but didn't say much, because only by experiencing it could one know the horror of Barrett. Sakaski, who didn't know the details, was completely confused, but he also knew that Barrett was not a simple person, so he listened quietly. Then, Kong looked at Rhine and asked softly, Rhine, do you have any opinion about Barrett and the other guy? Marshal Kong, regarding Barrett and Jin, I suggest that if you find them and want to capture them, it is best to choose a general to lead the team, with Borsellino cooperating. Rhine thought about it and put forward her own suggestion. Although she owed Barrett, she had been back in the Navy for so long and she also approved of the reformed Navy. The senior leaders in the Navy are very good to her family, and all of their disciples are the backbone of the new Navy. Now when they consider things, they don't naturally consider the Navy as they did at the beginning. Teacher Rhine is right. Akainu agreed, I fought with Jin and found that Jin has the ability to fly and control fire. I suspect he is a devil fruit user. Sakaski is right. Jin is a devil fruit user, but I don't know what his specific abilities are. I only know that he can fly, and at an extremely fast speed. Rhine nodded, then smiled bitterly and said, as for Barrett, I don't know if he has eaten a devil fruit, but I am sure that Barrett has the ability to fly, and even if he is not as good as Borsellino, he is not much worse. How can it be? Hearing this, Kong stood up straight with a look of disbelief. Zephyr, Vice Admiral Suru, and Sakaski all opened their mouths in disbelief. They knew very well how fast Borsellino was, and they had never seen anyone faster than Borsellino. Barrett knows a flying footwork that is a combination of the moon step, shaving kick, and storm kick. Barrett named it, a world away. Rhine explained with a wry smile, and this flying footwork happened to be developed by him and I together. Everyone was stunned when they heard this, and they all turned their eyes to Rhine, and soon their eyes became burning. If the Navy had this footwork, it would be much stronger in the future. Teacher Rhine, I want to learn this footwork, can you teach me? Sakaski spoke eagerly, looking at Rhine with burning eyes. His attack power was very strong, but his weakness was also obvious, that is, his speed. Although his speed was faster than many people, it was much slower than many strong ones. Sakaski, I know how to do it, but I can't do it, and neither can you. Rhine said bluntly, it's very special. In the early stages of training, you can only rely on pure physical strength, and you need strong recovery ability. In the Navy, even Garp may not be able to learn it. When everyone heard this, their eyes dimmed. After such a long time, the Navy's top brass recognized Rhine's abilities and were unreserved in teaching him. In the academy, Rhine was even more respected by the students than Zephyr. Among them, Sakaski and others are the most obvious. Because Rhine gave them a lot of advice on the development of their fruit abilities, they are also very convinced of Rhine. Then Mr. Rhine, can't I increase my speed? Sakaski was somewhat unwilling. His attack power was strong, but his weakness was very obvious. This time when he went out to sea, he encountered many fast pirates. Once the other party escaped, he would have no way to deal with them. Of course there is no solution. It just depends on whether you can endure hardship. Rhine smiled. Teacher Rhine, don't you know me? I can definitely endure hardships. There was light at the end of the tunnel, and Sakaski was very excited. Kong and the other two also laughed. As for the devil fruit, they also admired Rhine very much. After all, it was rare to develop a superhuman devil fruit to the point of awakening within 3 years. Okay, then you and Marshal Kong will ask for leave, and I will take you to practice. And as long as you practice seriously this time, I guarantee that not only will your speed be much faster, and you will be able to master the ability of short-term flight, but even your domineering aura may be improved a lot. Rhine smiled. Real. Sakaski was delighted when he heard that. Then he looked towards Sora, his eyes revealing an unclear meaning of asking for leave. Kong rolled his eyes, looked at Rhine, and said with a smile, Rhine, you see, it's the same whether you lead Sakazuki alone or a group of people. Why don't you two organize a special training and take all the trainees in the training camp out together? Marshal Kong, this is too unreasonable. Teacher Rhine brought me to learn new moves this time. How can you lead a group of people here? Sakazuki said resentfully. Hey, Rhine laughed. It's okay, Sakazuki. You are training in a special place where others can't disturb you. Let your teacher Zephyr train the others. I will help you research new moves. Thank you so much, Teacher Rhine. Sakazuki bowed. The others also smiled at each other. After a moment, Sora continued, Lieutenant General Suru, we should be able to issue a bounty on Barrett now. Using the excuse of attacking the Navy, the first bounty should not be too high. Barrett can be offered at 2 million, and Jin at 8,000 million. The other two can be left alone for the time being. Vice Admiral Suru nodded in response. What do you think? Kong looked at the other three. The three nodded in agreement. Well, Chief of Staff I'll leave this matter to you. Seeing that no one had any objection, Kong made the decision immediately. New World, Unknown Waters. A huge pirate ship like a sea king was sailing slowly on the sea. The bow of the pirate ship is embedded with the ramming horn of a white whale's head. This ship is famous in the sea. It is the Moby Dick, the flagship of the Whitebeard pirates, one of the overlords of the New World and the future four emperors. On the huge deck of the Moby Dick, Edward Newgate, the white-bearded man known as the strongest man in the world, sat on his huge chair, holding a newspaper and laughing. Barrett and Jin have reported it. I didn't expect the bounty on them to be quite high. Ha 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 ha. Let's see how these two Barrett guys are going to hide this time. Beside him, Kazuki Odin laughed loudly, with a look of gloating on his face. Odin, if Barrett and the others knew that you were gloating over other people's misfortune, I guarantee they would kill you. Marco, who was sitting at the bow, smiled with the same gloating expression. The last time they met, they were drinking and chatting, and they knew that Barrett and his companions did not want to go out to sea so soon and did not want to attract the attention of the Navy. Unexpectedly, not long after, Barrett and his companions were put on the bounty list. Hulala, excellent people can't hide. Those two guys were born to belong to the sea. Next time we meet, don't lose, little Odin. Whitebeard laughed and took a sip of his wine. How come? Kazuki Odin curled his lips, but there was still a serious look in his eyes. Chapter 54 7 Water Capital. At the same time, in the unknown waters, the Golden Jackson. Raleigh stood at the bow, holding a newspaper in his hand, gazing at the calm sea in the distance, in a daze. Rayleigh, are you worried? Suddenly, Roger came to the bow and looked at Rayleigh with a smile. No, I just didn't expect that these two guys would finally show up after such a long time. Rayleigh took a sip of wine and shook his head slightly. That's right, next time you catch one, shoot the bird first. Roger grinned, pretending to be angry, but it was obvious that he was very happy about the news about Barrett and the other man. I'm their master. If you dare to play it, I'll go get Shanks. Rayleigh glanced at Roger, and the meaning was very clear. I'm the master and can do it, but you can't. Roger was stunned. He didn't expect that Rayleigh, who was usually so carefree, would do such a thing. After a moment of silence, Roger suggested in a mean way, why don't we go get Buggy? If Jabba dares to show his teeth, we'll shoot him too. That's fine. I'm itching to do it. Rayleigh immediately nodded in agreement. Quick search for Bucky with Roger. Captain, Deputy Captain, what are you doing? Roger, Rayleigh, you two bastards. Ha 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 soon, screams, curses and laughter were heard from the Golden Jackson. The Grand Route, the port of the Seven Waters City. On the boat, Barrett put down the newspaper angrily and looked at Jin. He could also see the anger and smile in Jin's eyes. Behind the two of them, Delia was holding back her laughter, and Johnson looked excited. Boss, there's such a huge reward on you guys. Johnson seemed very excited and spoke very loudly. Shut up, idiot. Barrett and Jin stared at Johnson and said in unison. Johnson was confused and had no idea what was going on. Delia cold na tea hold it back any longer and laughed out loud. Damn, are all the Navy guys stupid? Why give them such a nickname? Barrett glared at Delia, his face full of anger and dissatisfaction. That's right. I'm the freaking Fire King, and you gave me a name called Feihuo. What's the matter? Jin echoed with an unhappy look on his face. Jin, can't you just not mention my nickname? Barrett's face was full of resentment. Fortunately, Jin's flying fire was still audible, but he was too embarrassed to mention his nickname. Boss, I didn't say anything about your fraudulent fox. Jin's face was full of grievance, and if it weren't for the curve at the corner of his mouth, Barrett would have believed it. When Barrett heard the nickname, Zahu, his face turned green. Damn you, Zahu. I can't even get 4 of the big shots and 13 of the small shots. Barrett became angrier and angrier. He suddenly stood up and shouted, damn it, I must ask the Navy to change my name. The other 3 were also startled by Barrett's sudden action and looked at him together. Jin, let's finish this as soon as possible. Then we can go and do something big and ask the Navy to change our nickname to, fuck the fraud fox. Barrett was very unhappy and his anger level skyrocketed. That's right, we must change this nickname. Jin agreed. Looking at the 2 indignant people, Delia and Johnson looked at each other. It seems to be saying, Ida's just a nickname. As for. After a while, Barrett and the other man gradually calmed down, and the 4 of them sat together. Jin, Johnson, you stay on the boat for a while. Delia and I will go to Carrera Company to book a boat. After the boat is booked, we will leave directly to Shibaoti Island. Barrett said. It is good, everyone nodded. 7 Waters, Carrera Company. Barrett, wearing a mask, came to the door of Carrera Company with Delia. Barrett, why do we have to customize the ship here? Looking at the Carrera sign, Delia looked at Barrett in confusion. Water 7 is a famous shipbuilding island in the pirate world, with shipyards everywhere. The 2 of them discovered quite a few shipyards along the way. Some of the ships seemed very good to her. She didn't understand why Barrett came to Carrera Company. Because the world's #1 shipbuilder is here. Barrett explained with a smile. In the world of One Piece, when it comes to shipbuilding techniques and technology, the first person that comes to mind is the minnow-headed fishman Tom. Tom was a master shipbuilder at Carrera and had built many ships. Among them, the most famous is the future pirate king, Rogers Golden Jackson. The world's #1 shipbuilder, is this true? Delia didn't quite believe it and looked at Barrett suspiciously. Barrett smiled mysteriously and walked into Carrera Company without explaining, because he himself couldn't explain clearly the source of the information, it was all because he was a time traveler. Delia saw Barrett leave and hurriedly followed him. As the 2 entered the shipyard, a man with a white shirt, a bow tie and a mustache came over. Hello, everyone. I'm Buck, a staff member of Carrera Company. Are you going to build a ship? The man with a mustache speaks very politely, and his faint smile makes it easy for people to like him. Hello. Barrett smiled and said, Mr. Buck, we need to build a ship, but I hope my ship will be built by Mr. Tom. I'm sorry, sir. If you specifically ask Master Tom to build the ship, then you can only talk to him. I am not qualified to make decisions for Master Tom. Buck apologized. No problem, take us to see Master Tom. Barrett said confidently. Yes, sir. Buck smiled and nodded, then made an inviting gesture. Sir, madam, please follow me. Excuse me, Mr. Barker. Barrett nodded and followed Buck with Delia. Soon, Buck brought the 2 to a dock. Inside the dock, a fat minotaur was saying something to the workers in the dock. The workers in front of him were holding paper and pen, listening very carefully, nodding from time to time, and sometimes concentrating on drawing on paper. However, Buck did not disturb the Minotaur at this time. He just said to Barrett and Delia apologetically, Sir, madam, you need to wait a moment. Master Tom is teaching skills at the moment. I cannot go up and disturb him. It's okay. Barrett waved his hand and looked at Tom carefully. Tom was almost the same as described in the original book, but he was much younger and looked strong. This is the fishman. Delia, standing by, had a curious look on her face and stars in her eyes, and she was even more interested in the future voyage. Along the way, her knowledge gradually increased and her horizons broadened, but this was the first time she had seen the merfolk. Delia, we will go to Fishman Island in the future. There are not only a lot of fishmen living there, but also many mermaid ladies, who are very beautiful. Barrett chuckled. He was also very curious about the mermaid girl. After all, mermaids were much more beautiful than mermen. In the human aesthetic, mermen were considered monsters. Really? Barrett. Delia stared with her eyes wide open, a trace of longing on her face. Really, Fishman Island is the only way to the New World. Now if we want to go to the New World, we must pass through Fishman Island. Barrett rubbed Delia's head and smiled. Hate it, Bar especially rubbed my head. Delia pulled Barrett's hand in dissatisfaction, pouted and glared at him, then turned her head away and sulked. Sir, madam, Master Tom has finished his lesson. I will take you there. Just then, Buck's voice rang out. Then I'll trouble you, Mr. Buck. Barrett ignored the childish Delia and followed Buck towards Tom. Asshole. Seeing this, Delia stomped her feet and followed angrily. Master Tom, this gentleman needs to build a ship and wants to talk to you alone. Buck said respectfully. Hello sir, what kind of ship do you need to build and why do you need me to build it? Tom was very polite, but at the same time gave people a feeling of being aloof. Barrett explained with a smile. Hello Master Tom, I need to build a large ship. It can hold at least 1,000 people at a time, has atom wood as its keel, uses flame as its energy source, and is twice as fast as a Navy ship. I think you are the only one who can do this in the entire Seven Waters City. Sir, the cost of building this ship is not low, but atom wood is very valuable. Our company does not have it, so we can only buy it. It will also take a lot of time and money. It will take at least half a year, and this is on the premise that we can buy atom wood. Tom said. I have the money, and I'll give you 2 years. But after 2 years, I must see the ship. Is that a problem? Barrett responded. Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audiobook YouTube channel Chapter 55 Designing a Ship. Sir, I have another question. After thinking for a moment, Tom said, Sir, it may be difficult to build a ship that can carry 1,000 people. It is difficult to find atom wood that big. Once it is spliced together to serve as a keel, the hull will be unstable. Therefore, the overall length of the ship can only be 80 meters. If you want a fast speed, the hull cannot be too high. It can only be designed with 2 floors. Therefore, it is impossible to accommodate 1,000 people. With current technology, only warships above the rank of vice admiral can do this. Upon hearing this, Barrett realized that he had taken things for granted. No matter how powerful the Seven Water City was, it was just a folk craft and naturally could not produce a large ship that could carry thousands of people. After a moment of silence, Barrett asked, Master Tom, if we do as you think, how many people can it accommodate at most? 200 people, Tom responded. But there is another problem. Many things on the ship will be gone, such as the exercise room and entertainment room. These will be cancelled and replaced with rooms. In addition, the kitchen, dining room, storage room, and accommodation will all be reduced in size, and the comfort will be much worse. Delia felt sick when she heard that. It didn't matter if there was no exercise room or entertainment room, since there were people practicing madly on the ship, the deck would be fine. But if the rooms were all reduced in size, then it would not be a voyage, but a torture. So, Delia stared at Barrett, as if to say, if you dare to design this, then there's no chance of playing. Master Tom, why don't you just tell me how many people your best design can carry? Barrett smiled bitterly. He didn't expect designing a ship would be so troublesome. 50 people. Tom smiled and said, Sir, I can only take 50 people at most while ensuring the performance of the ship. The only regret is that each sleeping room may be a little small. Delia became unhappy again when she heard this and turned her gaze directly to Barrett. Damn, I am crazy. This is the main ship design. We can do whatever is comfortable for us. Barrett cursed himself inwardly, always thinking about how many people the ship could carry, and got into a dead end. He didn't realize that he would not be a ship in the future, and he forgot the term fleet in his excitement. After Tom's repeated reductions, he suddenly realized and said, Master Tom, we only designed 20 rest rooms, but they must be spacious. In addition, the storage room should be designed to be twice as large as the original one, the dining room and kitchen should be designed to be twice as large as the original one, the entertainment room can be smaller, and the exercise room should also be designed to be twice as large as the original one. In addition, the deck must be spacious. That's fine, and I can also design a secondary energy room, which can be used as a backup energy source in the future. Tom nodded. Okay, let's do it this way. Barrett nodded with a smile on his face. Delia was also very happy and had high expectations for the new ship. Tom smiled and said, "Now that we've decided, I'll go draw the design now and show it to you later. You can talk to Buck about the price." "Thank you for your help, Mr. Tom." Barrett bowed. "No, this is my job. I'll go draw the design first, you guys chat first." Tom said this and walked towards the small room in the dock. "Mr. Buck, how much will it cost to do as Master Tom said?" "Just tell me the price," Barrett said with great wealth. He was not at all worried about the money. At the beginning, Big Beard had several large boxes of treasure. Later, when they came from the New World, they encountered many robbers along the way. Barrett and Jin were naturally happy to help. There were more than 10 boxes of treasure. They didn't know how many Baileys there were after the specific conversion. Sir, if what Mr. Tom said is true, your ship has very high requirements for atom wood, then such atom wood would cost about 8 million Baileys according to the market price. Adding other materials, processes and Master Tom's salary, the total is about 18 billion. In addition, Mr. Sir, because your ship requires atom wood, you need to pay half of the deposit, which is 9 million Baileys. No problem. Barrett agreed immediately. But you need to wait for me. I'll go get some Baileys and will be back soon. Sir, you can also settle the bill with treasure. We have professional appraisers here and will not let you suffer any loss. Buck responded with a smile. Well, my ship is now docked at the port. If it's convenient for you, come with me. By the way, help me exchange all the money for Baileys. Also, help me change to another ship. I need to go to the Sabayati archipelago. After hearing Buck say that Carrera Company could exchange treasures, Barrett decided not to bother two masters. They needed Bailey to go to Shibayoti Island anyway, so they might as well exchange them all here to avoid trouble. What's more, Akainu knew their ship and was also preparing to change ships. They had originally planned to wait until things here were over before changing ships, but now they might as well solve it all at once. Buck said, Sir, please wait a moment. We can wait for Master Tom's design to come out. After we have looked at it, we will go over. I will also report the situation to the manager and ask him to send someone to go with me. Okay, we'll wait for you here. Barrett nodded. Wait a moment, sir, I'll be back soon. Buck said hello and left in a hurry. Barrett, do you need me to go back early? Let Jin leave the ship first, and come back after everything is done. Delia asked in a low voice after Buck left. No need. They know we are pirates. Letting them know about the existence of King is also a disguised deterrent. Barrett curled his lips. As a shipbuilding resort, how could Water 7 City not deal with pirates? Otherwise, when Buck heard about the treasure just now, he would not have calmly mentioned that their company also had the business of exchanging Baileys. Delia opened her mouth wide with an incredible look on her face. She didn't expect that such a formal company like Carrera would have transactions with pirates. Delia, this is the rule of the Seven Water City. Others should know what's going on but we shouldn't tell them. So we can't reveal our identities either. That would break the rules and put others in a difficult position. Do you understand? Barrett warned in a low voice. Yeah. Delia nodded heavily. Everything he experienced today taught him a lot. Not long after, Buck and Tom came over one after another. Sir, please take a look at my design. Tom handed the design to Barrett with a smile, his fish face full of confidence. Barrett took the design and looked at it carefully, not paying any attention to Delia who wanted to see it but couldn't reach it. The ship designed by Tom is 81 meters long, 42 meters high, with 3 floors and a total of 32 gun mounts. The other specifications were also drawn according to what Barrett said. The power is also mainly flame-based. Overall, it is very good. The only thing that made Barrett feel awkward was that the design of the bow looked a bit like a sheep's head, which did not seem domineering enough and did not fit his personality. So Barrett bent down, pointed at the bow on the drawing, and asked Tom, Master Tom, I want to ask, can this sheep's head design be modified? This is originally designed to enhance the aesthetics. If you want to change it, you can. Tom nodded, and then asked, so how do you want to change it and what do you want to change it to? Okay, Master Tom, give me a pen and paper, I'll draw a diagram, and you can handle the bow according to it. Barrett said after a moment's silence. Here, sir, I have some paper and pen. Buck handed the paper and pen to Barrett. Thanks, Barrett took the paper and pen and began to draw. After a while, a divine bird appeared on the paper. The divine bird had eyes like a crow, a beak like a falcon, tail feathers like a phoenix, 3 legs under its body, and all its feathers were burning with golden pure yang flames. The divine bird holds its head high, which makes people feel a sense of nobility and dominance. Sir, what kind of bird is this? Seeing the domineering bird, Tom couldn't help but ask curiously. Delia and Buck also looked at Barrett curiously. 3-legged golden crow Barrett uttered a few words softly. There was no legend of the 3-legged golden crow in this world. Barrett chose the 3-legged golden crow, firstly because it was unique, and secondly because of the 3-legged golden crow's domineering power and the ability of its own fruit. 3-legged golden crow the 3 of them looked confused and bewildered. Master Tom, can you make this? Barrett was not so idle as to tell stories to others. He just smiled and looked at Tom. Tom took the drawing paper, looked at it carefully, and nodded. Then thank you for your help. Barrett bowed slightly and saluted, then turned to Buck and said, Mr. Buck, since Mr. Tom has taken care of it, please come with us. That's what you should do, sir. Buck nodded with a smile. Then Master Tom, we'll leave first. I'll trouble you with the boat. Barrett greeted Tom with a smile. Sir, walk slowly. Tom smiled and waved. Chapter 56 Buying Slaves. Barrett and Delia took Buck and his party back to their ship. As soon as they saw Jin on the boat, Buck and the others were stunned for a moment, but it was only a moment. After all, the Carrera Company had been dealing with pirates for many years, so they were not surprised by any pirate, no matter how big it was. Everyone tacitly pretended not to know and went about their work with peace of mind. Soon, more than a dozen boxes of treasure were accounted for. Sir, according to our calculations, your dozen boxes of treasure are worth a total of 25 billion Baileys. After deducting the 9 million Baileys deposit and the 2,000 million Baileys for the replacement of the ship, we need to give you 16 billion Baileys. Here is the calculation form, you can take a look. Buck handed Barrett a form. No need, Mr. Buck, just complete the transaction as soon as possible so we can leave. Barrett didn't take the form and smiled faintly. In Buck's opinion, Barrett seemed extremely free and easy, but only Barrett himself knew that he got a headache when he saw those forms. Okay, sir. Buck nodded with a smile. Not long after, Barrett and his team completed the transaction. Barrett took Jin and the other 2 on board a new ship and headed towards Chambord Islands. Barrett and his group, wearing the same clothes as Long, walked towards the illegal area No. 12. The Sabayati archipelago is near the naval headquarters. There is the world's largest mangrove tree, the Archiman mangrove. Because the roots of the tree are always exposed above the water, the Sabayati archipelago was formed. The entire island is made up of 79 trees, all numbered, and there are towns and facilities on each tree. People call this archipelago of 79 islands the Chibayoti archipelago. The regional divisions of the Chibayoti archipelago are also very clear, based on the numbers on the trees. Numbers 1 to 29 are illegal areas such as human trafficking shops. Numbers 30 to 39 are an amusement park. Numbers 40 to 49 are the tourist areas, where souvenirs are sold. Numbers 50 to 59 are the shipyard, where there are coating craftsmen. Numbers 60 to 69 are the entry and exit areas for the Navy and the government. Numbers 70 to 79 are hotel streets and other places. As the entrance to the New World, the Chibayoti archipelago is very prosperous. But it is also very chaotic, especially the illegal zones 1 to 29, where human trafficking, arms, drugs, etc. are all available. Here, it is a paradise for pirates, where the strong are truly respected. If you show even a little bit of weakness, others will take advantage of you and will even add insult to injury. On the contrary, as long as your injuries are severe, people will be afraid of you and others will be wary of you and dare not provoke you easily. For example, just like Barrett and the others, after Jin used his domineering color, a group of people fell to the ground. When they asked for directions, someone led the way, and they soon arrived at a slave market where human trafficking was taking place. As the 4 of them entered the slave market, a middle-aged man with fat intestines and tripe came over, shaking the fat on his face and flatteringly said, "Dear guests, I am the person in charge of this market. If you need anything, I can take you there directly." How much is the price for a slave between 12 and 15 years old, without disease or physical defects? Barrett spoke lightly. He had never had a good impression of slave traders. If he had not been lying dormant, he would not have come to buy slaves, nor would he have dealt with slave traders. Sir, this kind of slave is very popular among the nobles, so the price will be higher. The fat man said with a smile. Price. Under the mask, Barrett's eyes focused, and a domineering aura flashed across him. 20 belly for men and 15 belly for women. The fat man was frightened and cold sweat broke out on his forehead. How many of these slaves do you have? Barrett asked. About 800. The fat man was silent for a while and responded in a deep voice. Delia was stunned for a moment when she heard the number said by the fat man, but Barrett and the other two felt it was very normal. Barrett and Jin knew that it was because they had encountered many slave ships before and had become numb to it, while Johnson felt that it was because he himself was a slave. I want to choose it myself. Barrett said lightly. Guys, please come this way. The fat man hesitated for a moment, but when he thought of Barrett's previous dominance, he chose to agree. After many twists and turns, the fat man led everyone to the place where the slaves were imprisoned. All the slaves were locked in a huge iron cage, both men and women. They looked very thin, but their limbs were intact. However, most of them had empty eyes and sat in the cage stupidly, as if they had chosen to accept their fate. Sir, the slaves you want are in these cages. You can choose them directly if you need them. The fat man said, pointing at the cages. Barrett nodded without responding. The face under the mask looked a little heavy. Although he had seen it many times, he felt a little heavy in his heart every time he saw it. I am not here to select slaves. If you want to leave, you can follow me. The price may be death and your loyalty. Barrett's voice was not loud, but it was clearly heard by everyone in the cage. Most of the people in the cages still had blank expressions on their faces and empty eyes, as if they hadn't heard anything at all. Some people have a glimmer of light in their eyes. If you want to leave, stand up. Walk to the cage, and let me see your belief in freedom. You only have 1 minute. After 1 minute, I will leave. Barrett looked at the cage calmly. His tone was even, but it gave people a very sincere feeling. Take me away, and I will give you my loyalty. A moment later, a young man walked tremblingly to the cage and looked at Barrett with burning eyes, with desire and light in his eyes. You are the first. Barrett glanced at the boy. He looked young, with scars and blood all over his body, but there was a light in his eyes. Then, the second, third, fourth. That's all, let them out. A minute later, Barrett turned to look at the fat man and spoke softly. Okay, sir. The fat man turned his head and took a look. There were about 500 figures in front of the cage. A very happy smile appeared on his face. Big customers like Barrett were only seen a few times a year. Someone, please record it for me and let these people out. The fat man waved his hand and shouted to the 2 guards standing at the other end. Okay, my lord. 2 guards ran over with fawning looks on their faces, opened the iron locks with a click, and released the slaves one by one. The fat man was recording on the side. Boss, can these people really do it? Looking at the skinny and pale slaves, Jin couldn't help but murmur. I told them that they might die, and if their determination to live is not strong enough, then there is only death. Barrett's tone was cold, making people feel that he was not at all human. Barrett, how could you do this? Delia looked at Barrett with dissatisfaction. You are not mine yet. Barrett glanced at Delia indifferently. Delia shuddered and lowered her head silently. Whether it's you and Johnson, or them, you all need to go through this trial. Only those who survive will be qualified to follow me. Barrett ignored the disappointed Delia and walked forward while speaking. Finally, he looked directly at all the boys and girls who had walked out of the cage, and said sternly, I'll give you one last chance. If you follow me, you will experience death first. Only with my approval will I remove the shackles from his neck. If you don't have the courage to go through it, then you can go back. If you are willing to follow me, walk behind me. Some of the slaves who were released were hesitant, because they had come out to make friends and just wanted freedom, not to die with anyone. Most people walked behind Barrett in a carefree manner. For them, they would rather die than be without freedom. Soon, a large group of people gathered behind Barrett, about 300 people. Some of the people standing in front of the cage wanted to come over, but Barrett waved his hand and said, You missed your last chance. Sir, please give us another chance. Yes. Sir, we also want to follow you. Quote. Hearing this, the faces of the remaining boys and girls suddenly changed, and they all asked Barrett to take them in, because they saw the ferocious smile of the fat supervisor. There are many choices in life. Some people choose stability and keep themselves safe, while others choose the unknown, death, or a turbulent life. But you must not regret it, because time cannot be reversed. Barrett's calm voice reached the ears of everyone present. Jin and others seemed to be lost in thought, and the remaining slaves looked ashen. They did not beg because they knew that the man in front of them would not give them another chance. Put them back in. Then, the fat man's slightly fierce voice sounded. Go in. The two guards viciously drove the remaining slaves into cages. Now, you want 308 slaves in total. I'll give you a discount. Regardless of gender, all of them will be charged 15 belly, a total of 462 million belly. The fat man walked up to Barrett with a flattering look on his face. Jin, pay and leave. Barrett nodded, turned around and said to the group of people following him, let's go. Yes, my lord. Everyone responded in unison and followed Barrett away. Chapter 57 Ranking Chibaoti Archipelago, Area 12. On the deck of the big ship, Barrett and his 4 companions stood at the bow. From now on, your fate is in my hands. You have no names in my eyes, only codes, starting from 1 and going up to 308. Barrett spoke passionately. From now on, you will be subjected to trials continuously. Only when the trials are over and you are still alive and the shackles on your neck are opened, will you be qualified to regain your former name. Barrett paused, looked directly at the slave in front of him, and said word by word, or, I will personally give you a name and you will become a cadre on my ship. Sir, I apply for number 1 as my code name. In the future, I will be the first to break the shackles around my neck and become a cadre under you. When the time comes, please grant me a name. As soon as he finished speaking, the young man who stood up first took a step forward, knelt on one knee, and shouted loudly. Ha ha. Barrett chuckled, I hope you can do as you said. From today on, you are number 1. From now on, you will arrange your numbers by yourselves. The higher the number, the more you will get. But before we reach our destination, if you haven't completed the arrangement, then I will kill those who don't have a number. Barrett looked directly at the group of slaves and spoke in a calm tone, but it made people feel like an ice cone, sending chills down their spines. After saying that, Barrett turned and walked towards the control room, followed closely by Jin and Johnson. Why don't you start quickly? People without serial numbers will really die soon. Looking at Barrett and his men leaving, Delia felt reluctant and gave them a reminder before running off the boat. I am number 1, don't fight me, or I will kill him. As soon as Barrett and his companions left, the young man from before stared at everyone with bared teeth, his expression extremely ferocious. The others were silent, not because of the boy's fierce expression, but because the number 1 was bestowed by Barrett himself. Rumbling, as the ship started, everyone came to their senses. I'm number 2. If you don't agree, you can try it. A little girl walked out from the crowd, her expression also very fierce. The others looked at the little girl, some of them eager to make a move, and some even took a few steps forward. She is number 2, I am number 3, whoever touches her will die. At this moment, a figure as big as an iron tower walked behind the little girl and looked at everyone ferociously. Looking at the sturdy man who came forward, several people who wanted to take action stopped. Then, 5 more girls came out. Feeling the fierce gazes of the crowd, the leader said timidly, don't get me wrong, we don't want the first 5 numbers. We want the last 5 numbers, 308 to 304. Can? Everyone nodded. The 5 little girls all breathed a sigh of relief and stood obediently at the back. Seeing this, some people had a thoughtful expression on their faces and thought about imitating the 5 little girls. The method that the 5 of them came up with can only be used by themselves. Everyone else should line up forward. However, before anyone could take action, Barrett's cold voice reached everyone's ears. Hearing this, some people looked at the girls with envy, but they did not dare to disobey Barrett's orders. They could only wait for some powerful people to work out the results. Soon, dozens of people came out one after another, and the serial number reached 99. However, when a teenager announced with a smile on his face that he was number 100. Who do you think you are to be in front of me? Another young man walked out of the crowd and looked coldly at the boy standing at position 100. Hearing this, the others all showed expressions of watching a show. You can come and try. The boy who was being talked about looked angry and looked viciously at the boy who was speaking. Humpha A, the young man who spoke, did not answer and punched the young man standing at the 100th position. Benga A, the boy at position 100, was stunned for a moment, then he started to fight back, punching the boy who was speaking. The boy who spoke said nothing, but just held his head in defense. Seeing this, the others showed mocking expressions. The young man at position number 100 also showed a hint of complacency, and his movements couldn't help but slow down a bit. Roar! Suddenly, the boy who had been being beaten launched an attack and bit the boy in the 100th position on the ear with great force. With a hiss, the boy at position 100 had his ear pulled off. What? The boy in position 100 covered his ears and howled in pain. Vomit! The others were also stunned by the scene before them. The timid ones immediately turned their heads away and vomited because they couldn't stand the sight of blood. Before the others could react, the boy who had been beaten before pounced on him again, riding on the boy in position 100 and punching him on the head again and again. What? The boy in position 100 had no way to hide and could only howl in pain. A few minutes later, blood was all over the ground. The boy who had been beaten stood in the 100th position covered in blood. He looked at the crowd coldly and shouted, "I am number now. If you don't accept it, you can come and try." The boy's ferocious expression, coupled with the blood all over his body, frightened everyone so much that they dared not move or fight with him. Among the 99 people in front of him, some showed disdain, while others looked solemnly. Good. Barrett, who was observing secretly, couldn't help but secretly admire the boy's performance. Everyone was silent for a moment, then started ranking again. A few hours passed quickly, and several major battles broke out during the process. Blood was all over the ground, and some people died. This made some people hesitate to come forward to rank, and there were still 20 people who had not received serial numbers. Time up. As the ship suddenly stopped, Barrett's voice reached everyone's ears. Bang bang at the same time, the collars on the necks of the 20 people without serial numbers exploded, their heads were all blown to pieces, and blood splattered. The remaining people looked terrified, with expressions of relief on their faces. Dengadang, accompanied by the sound of footsteps, Barrett walked onto the deck, followed closely by Jin and Johnson carrying 2 boxes. Vomit! Delia, who was walking at the end, looked at the blood and brain matter all over the ground. She couldn't help but vomit while holding the bow of the boat. Clap clap! Barrett clapped his hands and smiled. Congratulations, you've passed the first test and have a chance to survive. Then, Barrett pointed to the boxes that Jin and Johnson had put down. These are for you. Number 100 in front, each of you can take 1 item from each box. Number 101 to 200 can only choose 1 box. Number 82 can choose 1. If you want to choose, there will be a trial in a month. If you get a ranking, you can have it. Barrett pointed at the island and shouted, "Now, I will give you half an hour. Within half an hour, you must clean the boat and gather on the island. If you miss the time, I'm sorry, you will be eliminated. And I'm sure you all know the consequences of being eliminated." "Yes, my lord." Everyone responded in unison. Johnson, ask Delia to help distribute things. The 2 of you will also join this trial. After the distribution, gather with them. Barrett instructed Johnson and jumped onto the island. Jin patted Johnson on the shoulder and followed Barrett into the boat. Jin, we will be busy in the next period of time. Barrett looked at Jin with a smile and was very satisfied with the island. He asked Jin to find this island, which was located on the edge of the doldrums. It was an uninhabited island with wild beasts roaming everywhere, making it a perfect place for cultivation. In addition, the island is located on the edge of the doldrums, and usually no one comes here, so it is relatively hidden. Boss, the beasts on this island are not weak. These people may not be able to do it. Jin glanced at the people who were cleaning on the boat and his tone became serious. Jin, the path we are going to take is destined to be one that cannot be lenient. Barrett stared at Jin with a very serious expression. Boss, I understand. After a moment of silence, Jin's eyes became firm. Barrett patted Jin's shoulder and said with a smile, "Go get some beasts first, let them have a good meal, and then we can train them the rest of the time. You have to be a good instructor." "Okay, Jin nodded with a smile, leapt up and flew into the depths of the forest. About half an hour later, Johnson and Delia led the way, with 282 people standing on the island. Some of them put on new training uniforms and held long knives, some were in tattered clothes and held long knives, and some were wearing new training uniforms with empty hands. There are also people who have nothing in their hands and are dressed in rags, and they can't hide their envious eyes. Looking at everyone, Barrett seemed extremely satisfied. This was intentional on Barrett's part, because only in this way could one arouse people's competitive spirit. Okay, from now on, your trial officially begins. Barrett said loudly. Johnson, step out. Yes, boss. Johnson stepped forward and walked out of the line. Chapter 58 Training begins. Johnson, from now on, all the men in the team are in your hands. In a month, I will hold the first trial. If too many people die, you will be punished. Barrett said seriously. Boss, what if they don't take it seriously? Johnson scratched his head with a very honest expression. When the others saw this, they felt extremely uncomfortable and wanted to laugh but didn't dare to. Can't you think of a solution? Barrett glared at him unhappily. Can you kill people? Johnson grinned, and his cold teeth made everyone feel cold all over, and all the previous smiles turned into fear. It's normal for some people to die during training. Barrett grinned, a very cold smile. I understand, boss. A trace of cruelty flashed across Johnson's face. He turned around and looked at the young people, opened his mouth and laughed. Boys, you heard what the boss said, so don't make things difficult for me. Yes, a group of boys lowered their heads in fear. The conversation between the two men made them feel cold all over. Johnson, take them to training first. Okay, bossa. Johnson nodded excitedly and shouted to the group of boys, everyone, follow me now, and don't delay my dinner. Having said that, he left first. Seeing this, a group of boys followed one after another, fearing that they were a little slow. After Johnson and his men left, Barrett looked at the remaining girls. There were not many girls, less than 30 in total, and they all looked very thin, with timidity in their eyes. Only the little girl number 2 had a bright look in her eyes. Interesting. Barrett chuckled and walked over to the little girl, smiling. I remember you are number 2, right? Yes, sir, I am number 2. Number 2 responded loudly, his big eyes narrowed into crescents, revealing 2 sweet dimples. Number 2, to be honest, women have always been much weaker than men. I'm not sure how long you can stay in this position, said Barrett. Sir, I will definitely not be worse than them. Number 2 stared with big eyes, looking extremely unwilling. Ha ha. Barrett chuckled, turned to look at the remaining girls, and asked, what about you? Do you think you are worse than the boys over there? I won't. Delia took the lead, looking unconvinced. It's none of your business. Just stay aside. Barrett glared at Delia unhappily. He didn't expect Delia to be the first to jump out. Humpha. Delia glared at Barrett fiercely, pouted her lips, and turned her head away. What about you? Do you think you will be worse than them? Barrett ignored her and turned to look at the remaining girls. The remaining girls looked at each other, some of them hesitated and seemed a little scared. But soon, someone came out. They were 5 little girls who looked very fragile. Hey, you guys are good. Looking at the 5 little girls, Barrett smiled slightly. These 5 little girls were exactly the 5 people who had shown weakness on the boat just now, and they left a deep impression on him. As the 5 little girls stepped out, the rest of the girls came out one after another, because after the bloody scene on the boat, they knew that the man in front of them did not have the distinction between men and women, only life or death. Delia, their training is up to you. Watching everyone coming out, Barrett said something to the sulking Delia, jumped onto the bow, and watched everyone training quietly. Watching Barrett leave, Delia quickly organized herself and taught the girls the moves. Barrett watched for a while and couldn't help but sigh that people grow up under oppression. Under Johnson's high pressure, the boys learned quickly, and most of the boys' movements gradually became standard. On the other hand, on Delia's side, except for the 5 little girls and number 2, everyone else was doing a weird job. Delia, if you can't bear to be ruthless, then they will definitely die in the trial in a month. Barrett couldn't bear to watch it anymore and couldn't help but remind them. Hearing this, Delia shuddered, and as she looked at the group of girls, her eyes gradually became colder. She shouted coldly, you just heard it. In a month, you will also participate in the trial. If you want to survive, you must train with all your strength. Now, follow me. Do what I do until everything stops. Delia got down on her stomach and yelled at the girls. Under the threat of death, number 2 and the 5 little girls followed closely behind. Seeing this, the others immediately put aside their other thoughts and lay down as well. Everyone was training enthusiastically. In just 1 hour, countless people fainted. Delia also became as ruthless as Johnson. If you see someone fainted, wake them up, rest for a few minutes and then continue training. Seeing that the training was on the right track, Barrett jumped up and ran towards the comm belt. He planned to get a Sea King to lay the foundation for everyone. After all, his goal was to recruit subordinates, not kill people. At night, on an unknown island, Barrett got a Sea King about 50 meters long, poured the blood into several large barrels, divided them into male and female, and asked Delia and Johnson to be in charge of having people enter the barrels for baptism. It was not until midnight that everything was completed. Except for Barrett and the other 4, everyone else fell into a coma. Delia, Johnson, your training is not intense enough. Put on the weight-bearing equipment I bought in the Sabayati archipelago. From now on, you are not allowed to take it off unless it is a life-threatening situation. Barrett and his 4 companions sat around the campfire, and Barrett spoke as he ate the barbecue. I understand, boss. Johnson nodded. Yeah. Delia nodded. Jin, starting tomorrow, you will be responsible for teaching Johnson the 6 styles at night. His physical fitness is already sufficient, the only thing he lacks is fighting skills. Barrett said. Okay, boss. Jin nodded. Johnson grinned and ate more happily. He had known about the 6 forms for a long time and always wanted to learn it, but his physical fitness had never been up to standard, so he could only exercise. Now that he finally had the chance to learn it, he couldn't help but be happy. Barrett, what about me? Delia on the side seemed a little anxious and spoke eagerly. You're not in good physical shape. Barrett glanced at Delia, who looked very shriveled. I see. Delia's eyes dimmed quickly, and she ate the barbecue in a depressed mood. Boss, why don't you let Delia practice with you with the sword? This will not only help her lay the foundation, but also improve her physical fitness. Jin still agreed with Delia and couldn't help but help her. When Delia heard this, she suddenly looked up and looked at Barrett with burning eyes. I'm afraid she can't handle it. Barrett said calmly, she needs to exercise during the day, so she can only learn at night. Her physical fitness is too poor, and she may not be able to handle it. Barrett, I can do it, please believe me, I can do it. Delia immediately stood up and said that she could do it. Okay then. Starting tomorrow night, I will teach you the basic sword skills. After you finish eating, go get yourself a wooden sword. Barrett hesitated, but nodded. No, I'll go get a wooden sword now. Seeing Barrett agreed, Delia seemed very happy. She ran to the edge of the forest with a long knife, ready to make a wooden sword. Johnson, go and look after Delia. By the way, get yourself a wooden hammer. It will be good for your physical exercise. As soon as Delia left, Jin patted Johnson on the shoulder and said, okay, brother Jin. Johnson agreed happily, holding a large piece of meat and walking towards Delia. Jin, do you have anything to say to me after you sent Johnson away? Barrett asked after Johnson walked away. Boss, I still can't hide it from you. Jin was stunned for a moment, looking at Barrett with a wry smile. Then, he lowered his voice and said seriously, Boss, how are you going to arrange these people? Barrett explained in a low voice, I will use a year to screen them. Then, I will take them to Leah Island. Only those who survive on Leah Island will be qualified to become our partners. Boss, are you going to let them go to Leah Island? Jin's face was full of shock. He had personally experienced how terrifying Leah Island was. When he and Barrett went to the island, they were already very strong, but they still escaped death. Don't think too much. My crew members will have to go through this journey in the future. Barrett took a few bites of the barbecue in his hand and patted Jin's shoulder. After you finish eating, come with me to digest the food and find 2 places for these kids to take a bath, otherwise they won't be able to hold on. Jin didn't ask any more questions. He finished the barbecue in his hand in silence, then stood up and left with Barrett. Soon, a scorching heat and roaring sounds rose from the shore of the island. Chapter 59 The 1ND Trial 1 month later, on an unknown island. The sun is high in the sky and the air is hot. Huffa. There was another round of intense training on the island, and everyone on the island was doing various training in the water. Even Barrett and Jin were no exception. However, as soon as they came into contact with water, their bodies became limp, causing the boys and girls beside them to think that they were acting. Only Delia and Johnson knew that the two had eaten devil fruits and were practicing their resistance to sea water. Huffa. Barrett gasped for breath and did a push-up with all his might. With a plop, he fell into the sea. Then he turned over and climbed out of the sea with great effort. His strength recovered quickly. Damn, this is too exaggerated. Barrett whispered while looking at the sea. After becoming a user with special abilities, he had never been in the water until the last time he was knocked into the sea by Whitebeard. He then discovered that users with special abilities could still retain a bit of physical strength after being knocked into the sea. This gave him some ideas, that is, to train in the sea to build up resistance so that if he fell into the sea, he would at least not be completely defenseless. However, he obviously underestimated the side effects of sea water on people with special abilities. Once he was completely submerged, all his physical strength would disappear. After a month of continuous experiments, he was barely able to retain a little bit of physical strength and struggle to the shore. When Jin saw Barrett's training method, he became interested and started training with Barrett. However, he almost ended up in tragedy. Fortunately, Johnson was training next to him and lifted him up several times. But the two did not gain nothing. They found that by forcibly consuming physical energy in this way, they could increase their physical strength. So they thought about it and started exercising on the beach. In the evening, after the medicinal bath, everyone sat obediently in the open space on the shore, because they knew that they were about to begin a trial of life and death. I think you all know that you will start a trial outside the forest. Only those who survive will be eligible to continue to enjoy the qualification of becoming stronger. Are you ready? Barrett walked up to the crowd and looked at them with a smile on his face. After a month of training, the group of people gradually became stronger and looked much better than before. However, the medicinal herbs brought by Barrett and his crew have been used up. After the trial, he and Jin will leave to prepare the herbs. Ready. Everyone responded in unison, their voices echoing throughout the entire island. Barrett said loudly, "Remember, you need to survive in the forest for a week. During this period, you will not get any help and can only rely on yourself. There is only one requirement for you, and that is to survive." "Yes, my lord." Everyone responded in unison. "Jin, is everything arranged?" Barrett turned to look at Jin with a very serious expression. The trial that Barrett gave to the group of people was naturally prepared in advance. It only contained ordinary ferocious beasts. With the current strength of this group of people, as long as they were careful and not afraid, they could survive. If you are timid and don't use your brain, you will be disabled if you don't die. Boss, don't worry. Jin nodded seriously. Everyone. Barrett turned around, looked at everyone fiercely, and shouted loudly, "I declare the first trial to begin. Remember, you have no way out. I will block your way out. Set off." "Yes, my lord." Everyone bowed together and walked into the forest in a mighty procession. In less than a moment, the coast became empty. "Delia, Johnson, I will let Jin take you to your trial field in a while. It is 10 times more dangerous there than they are. If you don't want to, we will take you with us when we leave." Although Barrett said this to Johnson, he was speaking more to Delia, hoping that Delia would give up when faced with difficulties. "Boss, I accept the trial," Johnson grinned. "I accept that, too." Delia nodded in agreement. "Jin, take them." Barrett looked at Delia deeply, then turned and gave an order to Jin. "Okay, boss." Jin nodded and left with Delia and Johnson. Looking at the forest in the distance, Barrett's eyes flickered and there was a hint of struggle in them. He knew that many people would die after this group of people went in. Ho ho wa not long after, the roars of beasts were heard one after another in the mountains and forests, and ashes fell from the sky. "Everything is arranged?" Barrett asked softly without looking back, looking at the forest shrouded in darkness. "It's arranged." Jin's voice was dull. Seeing this group of boys and girls, he seemed to remember his childhood. "Only by breaking the shackles can you truly control your own destiny," Barrett whispered. Then, Barrett turned around and looked at Jin, changing the subject. "Jin, you keep an eye on this place, I'm going to the calm belt to see if there are other suitable islands." I have a plan next. Once it is implemented, this place will definitely be discovered. We need to prepare for the rainy day and find a place to stay in advance. Boss, what's the plan? Jin asked. I'm not sure yet. I'll tell you when I'm sure. Barrett responded. Then boss, I'll go check it out, you stay here and watch. Jin said. That's fine, but you have to remember to be more discreet. Barrett nodded. Jin's speed was about the same as his, but his endurance was much stronger than his. He could fly for several days in a row without getting tired. Then boss, I'll leave first. As Jin spoke, a pair of red wings stretched out from his back. He flew into the sky, and disappeared into the horizon with a flap of his wings. Barrett withdrew his gaze and looked towards the forest with worry in his eyes. Forget it, let's go and take a look. After hesitating for a moment, Barrett jumped and flew into the forest. He might be able to be indifferent to other people, but he couldn't turn a blind eye to Delia and Johnson and watch them die in front of him. Roar in the forest, all kinds of wild beasts danced wildly and roamed freely in the forest. So many people died. Barrett turned on his observation hockey and investigated carefully. He soon discovered that dozens of boys and girls who had entered the forest had died. Hey, Barrett sighed quietly but did not make any move. He had just checked and found that the animals in the forest were not strong. With the current physical fitness of these people, as long as they did not seek death and used their brains, they could survive these 7 days. Barrett didn't stop for long. He jumped up and used his observation hockey to detect Delia's location while flying. Soon, on the right side of the forest, he discovered a breath whose strength was about the same as Delia's. Barrett turned and flew towards Delia at high speed. A moment later, Barrett found Delia and discovered that she was fighting a tiger. She was covered with wounds, and the tiger was also chopped by her. Barrett landed on a tree and looked carefully. Delia let out a delicate cry, and in a flash, she appeared behind the tiger and chopped it hard with her long sword. Roar! The tiger seemed to sense something and swept its tail heavily towards Delia. Clang! Delia immediately retracted her long sword and blocked it in front of her. Under the tiger's huge force, Delia was swept several meters away, but she was not injured. Call out! Delia flashed again, this time appearing at the tiger's waist. She swung her long sword swiftly and slashed the tiger's waist, leaving a wound and bleeding. Roar! The tiger felt pain, turned around suddenly, and bit Delia. Seeing this scene, Barrett clenched a branch in his hand, ready to shoot at any time. Delia was not panicked at all and dodged at high speed. Then, he quickly moved to the other side of the tiger and slashed the same wound on the tiger with the long knife. Roar! The tiger was bleeding profusely. In severe pain, it roared to the sky and pounced on Delia. Delia moved quickly to avoid the tiger's attack. The tiger chased her relentlessly, but Delia did not confront it head-on and kept dodging. After a while, the tiger was exhausted, staggered a few times, and fell to the ground. Delia did not approach immediately, but waited for a long time. Seeing that the tiger did not move, she approached the tiger cautiously and gave it another blow. This guerrilla watching Delia's series of operations, Barrett couldn't help but smile. He left quietly, flying over the forest, looking for Johnson. Compared to Delia's cautious and agile behavior, Johnson was extremely violent. He fought the giant bear head-on with his fists, and the fight was extremely bloody. Barrett took a few looks and saw that Johnson was not in danger, so he flew to the outskirts of the forest. Using his sight and hearing skills, he found that the number of people outside had not decreased, so he left the forest. Chapter 60 Master's Wife 7 days later, Unnamed Island. Barrett and Jin stood outside the forest, waiting for people to return. Boss, there are so few people this time. Do we need to add a new batch? Jin asked softly as he looked at the boys and girls who were walking out of the forest one after another. No need. Didn't you notice that after this life and death experience, their spirit and energy have completely changed? Barrett chuckled. He was quite satisfied with this experience. Although many people died, the remaining ones were all injured. But among the remaining people, their spirit and energy underwent a drastic change. The previous cowardice was no longer seen in them, and now their whole bodies exuded a fierce aura. That's right. Jin nodded. Let's go. Everyone should be out. Let's go over there. Barrett said as he slowly walked towards the person who had just come out, and Jin quickly followed behind Barrett. Soon, the two arrived at the coast. Barrett looked at everyone and smiled. Congratulations. Your aura tells me that your strength has become stronger. I have prepared a medicinal bath for you. After you take a bath, you can have a good rest for the night. The next day will be a new challenge. Thank you, sir. Everyone's expressions relaxed, with a hint of surprise on their faces. Delia and Johnson also breathed a sigh of relief. Some people even fainted. After all, no one can bear being on edge for 7 consecutive days and being on guard against attacks from wild beasts. You guys go take a medicinal bath first. Tonight's dinner is Sea King. After eating, you can have a good sleep. Barrett said. Thank you, sir. Everyone bowed, supported each other, and walked towards the medicinal bath. Barrett and Jin walked to the coast and used their abilities to start producing a large number of Sea Kings. 2 hours later, the piles of animal meat gave off an enticing aroma. All those who were originally drowsy in the medicinal bath had their taste buds aroused by the appetizing aroma and slowly opened their eyes. It smells so good, this smell. Gudong. Accompanied by the sound of swallowing saliva, a group of boys and girls slowly walked out of the bathtub and walked towards Barrett and his companion. Just eat it. Then have a good sleep. Barrett said with a smile when he saw someone coming. The crowd didn't hesitate to eat the meat with big mouthfuls, sweet smiles on their faces. The next day, early morning. Huff of the remaining boys and girls all gathered on the shore, sweating profusely, their heavy breathing echoing throughout the entire island. After this experience, they finally understood what Barrett meant by death at the beginning. Death is the fate of the weak and foolish. Only the strong and wise can survive. After repeated trials and transformations, they will eventually break the shackles around their necks. Looking at the boys and girls who were training more seriously, Barrett raised the corners of his mouth and revealed a gratified smile. The trial was very cruel. Out of 282 people, only 200 were left in the end, and 82 people died. 70 boys died and only 12 girls were left, and among the boys, 3 were among the top 10. Among them was the number 1 at the time, the boy who stood up for the first time, got behind Barrett, and fought to be no. 1. For this, Barrett felt a little regretful, because the young man had a good mentality, and if he survived in the end, he would definitely become his backbone in the future. But unfortunately, the boy's talent is a little poor. After training for a month, his strength can only be considered average. In the end, he only survived in the forest for 3 days before dying together with a bear. Boss, our herbs won't last much longer. Suddenly, Jin walked up to him and whispered in his ear. How long can I hold on? Barrett frowned. He didn't expect that the medicinal herbs would be consumed so quickly. Back then on Shampoo Island, he used all his remaining money to buy medicinal herbs. 1 month at most. Jin said seriously. Barrett was silent for a while, then said to Jin, starting tomorrow, we will start transferring people to the island you found every night. After everyone has been transferred, we will return to this island and start from this island to do our work. Okay, yeah. Jin nodded without asking any more questions. At night, Barrett and Jin began to take action. For 7 days, all the people were moved to an unnamed island deep in the doldrums. Barrett also entrusted all the training matters to Delia and Johnson, and they both returned to the nameless island that night. At night, Barrett and Jin are now on the coast. Boss, what are we doing in the Sabayati archipelago? Jin looked at Barrett with confusion on his face. Go get the money, and ask the Navy to change my nickname. Barrett said with a smile. Boss, tell me. Upon hearing that the nickname was changed, Jin became energetic and looked high-spirited and excited. Let's go. I need to meet Master's wife to confirm. Barrett smiled mysteriously and jumped onto the boat parked on the shore. Master's wife When Jin heard this, his eyes widened. After being stunned for a moment, he hurriedly flew onto the boat. Chibayoti Archipelago, Island No. 13. Boss, you are not kidding me. The Master's wife is really here. Outside a bar, Jin looked at the name of the bar with a look of disbelief on his face. Don't worry. I will definitely not lie to you. Barrett patted Jin with a smile, and with a creak, he pushed open the door of the bar. The bar was deserted, with no customers inside. There was only a beautiful young lady with black hair, holding a cigarette, burning with loneliness. Seeing the beauty's iconic movements and image, Barrett instantly guessed that the black-haired girl was their master's old lover, Shachi. What would you two like to drink? Shachi glanced at Barrett and Jin and spoke lightly. Boss, 2 glasses of rum. Barrett smiled and pulled Jin to sit down. Hold on. Shachi glanced at Barrett and the other man, the corners of her mouth slightly raised, revealing a meaningful smile. Jin glanced at Shachi, and as soon as he opened his mouth, Barrett shook his head at him. 2 glasses of rum, 1 million Baileys, no credit. After a while, Shachi walked up to the 2 men with 2 glasses of wine. After putting down the wine, she looked at Barrett and the other man with a smile. Barrett's smile froze. He knew that Shachi was a swindler, but he didn't expect it to be so swindler. Jin's eyes widened and he looked at the wine in disbelief. Boss, you're exaggerating. Barrett pretended to be angry. Boss, you are such a rip-off. I can buy a ship of rum with 1 million Baileys. Jin was standing aside, filled with righteous indignation and looked extremely excited. His true feelings were revealed and he could hardly suppress the fire in his body. Barrett was stunned, and quickly grabbed Jin and warned him, You bastard, if you do anything, I guarantee that the master will beat you to death. Hey, Shachi glanced at Barrett and said with a playful smile, Boy, why don't you pretend? 1 million Baileys, I won't play with you if I lose it. Master's wife, we are all family, it shouldn't be that serious. Barrett didn't dare to pretend anymore and begged for mercy quickly. Master's wife Jin, who was standing by, was completely stunned and stared at Shachi blankly. What? You're not going to do it anymore, kid. Shachi glanced at Jin with a playful smile on her lips. Master's wife, I was wrong. Please don't bear grudges. Jin stood up and bowed, his attitude very sincere. Barrett covered his forehead with his hands, too embarrassed to watch. This desire to survive was fully described by Jin. HMPH. Shachi rolled her eyes at the 2 of them, then lit another cigarette, sat casually on the sofa, and said quietly, You 2 little bastards, what do you want from me? Just tell me. You don't want to learn the good things, but learn the old bastard's tricks instead. Master's wife, I just want to trouble you with a small matter. Barrett smiled awkwardly. I just want to ask, do you know when the celestial dragons will be able to arrive at the Sabayati archipelago? Why are you asking this, you bastard? Hearing this, Shachi's pupils shrank, the hand holding the cigarette paused for a moment, then she took a deep puff and exhaled a thick smoke ring. I just ran out of money, so I wanted to borrow some from them, and by the way, I wanted the Navy to help me change my nickname. Barrett had a nonchalant look on his face. To him, most of the celestial dragons were pigs. Kidnapping a celestial dragon would not only allow him to obtain a large amount of resources, but also threaten the Navy. Why not ask them to change their nicknames? You are going to cause trouble for the celestial dragons just for this. Shachi had a toothache, and she felt uneasy. She didn't expect Barrett to be so bold and crazy. She regretted having recognized him so hastily. Jin was also shocked. He didn't expect that the method Barrett mentioned to change the nickname was to cause trouble for the celestial dragons. This was an unprecedented move. Barrett spread his hands, looking helpless. Their funds were gone long ago, and the medicinal materials would be sold out in at most half a month. If he doesn't find a solution, the amount of training will have to be drastically reduced, which is not what he wants to see. Thank you for watching. Continue exploring the fascinating world of Chinese novels with us. Hit that subscribe button on Chinese Novel Audiobook to stay updated with our latest stories, and never miss out on a great listen.